Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to all our guests who are watching us live again with another episode on demystifying Hinduism. And with me, I have my usual co-panelist, Brother Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum. Brother
Wa
Hashim.
alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum. And we have Pandit Rami Sivan back once again. Welcome to you, Pandit Rami ji, Pandit ji.
Thank you.
Right. So those of you who have not seen the last part on demystifying Hinduism, Pandit Rami, I'm just going to quickly remind our audience, people who are going to listen now or even later and watch. Pandit Rami, he spent a decade studying Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and 3 years in India, undertaking formal study in the Yoga Vedanta philosophy, logic, hermeneutics, Sanskrit, and astrology. He has been practicing still as a Hindu priest and teacher of Yoga Vedanta philosophy for over 40 years, if I'm not mistaken, Panditji.
Correct.
He is a respected and recognized scholar of Hinduism. This is Sanatana Dharma, vested with full rights of initiating others, teaching philosophy and scripture, and conducting all the Hindu ceremonial and sacramental rites. So we are going to continue, inshallah, from where we left off last session, and we will be focusing on specifically today on karma and dharma. And I will let Panditji to explain what these are, and we will clarify as we go along so that people are clear in what these concepts actually mean in Sanatana Dharma. All yours, Panditji.
Brother Mansur, just before that, I know Panditji, welcome. Today's a very special day for you. You were just explaining to me just before we joined. What is this special day that is so special for you today?
So today is a day known as Vaikuntha Ekadasi, and it is a fast day. One of the, in every month there are 2 fast days. So this is the culmination of all those fast days. And it is a day when the gates of Vaikuntha, the gates of heaven, are opened every year. And so in many Vaishnava temples, there's a special door that is kept closed during the whole year. And on this day, that door is opened as symbolic of entering into the heavenly realms.
So will you be going to the temple later on today then to complete
Yes,
the
I
ritual?
will. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to convince all of you to join me and to accept the true faith and enter into Vaikuntha along with me.
Let's see how the discussion goes. That's not what we're here for, but let's see how the discussion goes.
Ramadan came a bit early for.
Yeah, Ramadan came early. Yes, exactly. Yeah, we're waiting for Ramadan. We're just under 3 months away from Ramadan, of course. We have 30 days.
You got until April.
Yeah. Unless Pandit, you want to just briefly explain the concept of Vaikuntha, because this again is not very similar to the Abrahamic tradition in terms of what exactly is heaven to you. Because is it same as Sarga and Narak, the opposite, or Vaikuntha?
Actually, we're deviating from the topic.
Let's just use it very quickly. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. There is a difference between mythology and philosophy.
Okay.
So mythology, in Hindu mythology, there are different heavens, and Swarga, you have to pass it in Sanskrit. So Su means good, Varga means state. So Swarga is a good state, and it can be here on earth. So for example, Beverly Hills, it's a good state. It's a Swarga. People living there very happy, well, that's questionable, but they're living very opulent and prosperous lives. So Vaikuntha, Vai means free from, Kunta means obstruction. So Vaikuntha simply means a state which is free from all limitation, free from obstacles and obstructions. So that is the mythological view. The philosophical view is that it's a state of moksha, a state of liberation from all contamination with material elements and limitations of body, speech, mind, name, and form. So when one is liberated from all these material constraints, one abides in a state of unification with God, which is known as moksha. So in Sufi terminology, it would be fana. It's that it's described as the river merging in the ocean. So we become one with God. That's the ultimate goal. So Swarga is a temporary intermediate state which is undesirable, because all states which have a beginning will have an end. So and Swarga is achieved through merit. So when you live a very good life and charitable, compassionate, kind, you can go and spend some time in Swarga. And then after your merit is, it's like having a holiday. And once your merit is diminished or ended, you return back to earth. And this ties into the concept of karma. So if you will allow me, karma has to go in hand with reincarnation. Okay. Because these two concepts are like horse and cart. So you can't separate them. So first of all, addressing the concept of reincarnation. The whole concept of reincarnation hangs on one thing, which is consciousness, the nature of consciousness. So the question is consciousness a product of the electrical and chemical constituents of the brain, or does consciousness pre-exist, post-exist the body? So the best analogy would be a computer, right? The internet does not reside in the computer. The internet is everywhere, but you need a computer to connect with the internet. And likewise, the body is just a machine through which consciousness manifests itself, but is not a product of the body. So that's the basic concept. Now, once you understand that that consciousness is the soul or the self or the ruh or the nafs, whatever you want to call it, that is consciousness. So that consciousness pre-exists the body and post-exists the body. And therefore, it is able to be to enter into another body and continue the cycle. Now, this cycle of reincarnation is driven by the force, the hypothetical force, which is karma. Karma is simply your actions and the results of those actions. So in Hindi, we say, jo boega so katega. And Jesus said, as you sow, so shall you reap. Same concept. So the idea is that every action has three reactions, three effects. So it's either positive, negative, or neutral. So every act which causes joy and happiness and kindness, compassion, and benefits another being is called good karma. Any act which causes suffering, harm, pain to another living being, that is bad karma. And neutral karma is like watching a game of cricket and so with a bunch of mates and eating chips and drinking orange juice. That's a neutral act. You're not hurting anyone. You're not benefiting anyone. You're just having fun. And so these acts, negative acts, will lead to negative consequences in this life and in the next life. So you'll be born back into circumstances which will be circumstances characterized by suffering. And if you do good works, good karma, you will return, and in your next life, you will enjoy more appropriate and beneficial circumstances. Now, again, the idea of karma is linked to the goodness of God. So if you say that God is all compassionate, the most compassionate, and then the question arises, why is there suffering in the world? Why are people born unequal? Why are some born to die early? Why do criminals live long lives? Why do good people live short lives? Why do people die when they are saving the lives of others? All these questions arise, and then you're thrown into a cognitive dissonance. But God is good, so how did these things happen? So we exculpate God from any negativity, and we bring the blame back to the individual. So we ourselves cause our own good fortune and bad fortune. It's got nothing to do with God. God is exculpated. He is perfect. He is all compassionate, wise, etc. So he is not involved in it. Now, the same debate occurs in Islam. And the first philosophical debate in Islam were between the Qadaris and the Jabaris. And some said that we have complete free will, the Qadaris, and the Jabaris said, no, everything is predetermined. So even within Christianity, Islam, Judaism, everybody is struggling with this idea of why is there suffering? Why do good people suffer and bad people not? So karma is an elegant theory which actually solves that problem and exculpates God. Now, okay, so questions on that?
Yes, wonderful. So I think that's a very interesting summary that you've given. So let me just sort of wrap this up very quickly, this first segment. So this idea of, first of all, it's foundational on the idea of circular time.
Yes, correct.
Which is what you mentioned last time round. And it's also foundational on a couple of premises. One is that every consciousness, you don't call it a soul, you call it consciousness.
Correct.
Every
Chetana.
Sorry.
The technical term is chetana, which comes from chit, which is consciousness.
Okay. So this consciousness exists over multiple cycles in various conscious beings. So they don't go into vegetables or rocks or things like this. They must go into sentient beings, right?
Well, to elaborate.
I'm assuming. So clarify, please.
Well, there's a little clarification there.
Yeah.
According to the texts, there are 8,400,000 species of animals, species of being, conscious being. And the soul, or the chetana, begins its journey by entering into the lowest form of life and slowly evolving through all forms of life until we reached a human stage. Now, up until the human birth, animals are not subjected to morality, laws of right and wrong. They just act according to their nature. So the evolution of the soul, or the chetana, through the lower species is automatic. It's just.
So does the lower species include inanimate objects as well?
No, only animals, creatures.
Okay. Right. So only creatures, right? Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
And then once we reach the human stage of our evolution, we obtain the ability. We have the ability to make moral and ethical judgments, and that is the time at which we begin creating karma for ourselves. The moment that you can judge what is right and wrong, then that is a time that you start accumulating karma. And then from the human species, you don't go back into the animal species. It's an evolution through the human world until you attain. Finally, the goal is to return to Godhead. So we emerge from Godhead and we go through this whole cycle. And then eventually we return back to Godhead. And that is the completion of that.
So there is never a regress where no matter how evil you are, you can never regress back into a lower life form.
No, you can, because when we observe people, we find people that are worse than animals. Mm-hmm. You have the most horrendous, wicked people around us, and we also have really angelic types. And so we don't need to go back into it's a process of learning, basically. And learning, growth, unfoldment. And so you can go back into lower human species, but you won't go back into the animal, like become a dog or a cat or a pigeon or something.
Good. So let me try and unpack some of that then. So first of all, let's start with the idea of time, first of all. You said circular time, but this presumes, therefore, that does something kickstart this, or is matter pre-existing for you? How does all of this actually start? What is the concept in Hinduism?
That's another interesting and complex matter.
Sure.
But basically, the universe is eternal, and it's not something that comes into being from nothing. You have cycles. So, for example, if you use the model of the Big Bang, just for argument's sake. So the Big Bang began with an explosion, 13 billion
30.78 billion years ago, yeah, approximately.
Right. And the universe expands and then eventually contracts back into that singularity. and then it goes through a refractory period, a latent period, and then it bursts forth again.
So under Hinduism, it goes through 4 yogas, right? Four ages, each universe. Is that right?
Those are mythical ages. They're not real. They're not real periods of time. They're mythical periods of time. So again, we need to differentiate between mythology and philosophy. So the metaphysics often contradicts the mythology. And so this is why right from the beginning, I want to make a clear distinction that I will be discussing mainly metaphysics, not mythology.
Okay, great. So you say if that's mythology, then okay. So there is the sort of pulsating universe model that you're focusing on, right? Now, does this mean then that this pulsation has been going on endlessly back into the past?
Correct.
Okay,
there's no point at which you can say, oh, in the years dot, this began, because time-space collapses and expands again. So every cycle, there's a beginning of time and space. So this is the Hindu concept is one of a pulsating, as you correctly said, is a pulsating universe. And from our point of view, it's impossible to conceive, because we can only conceive of time-space in our reference. When it comes to the cosmic or God's reference, we have absolutely no ability to even comprehend what that means. So there is God's perspective and our individual perspective.
Okay, but then, I mean, this raises for me the question of, if this is sort of infinitely pulsating into the past, then it means, how do we arrive at this current moment ever?
Well,
because it's an infinite regress.
There's infinite regress and infinite progress, because it's as I said, it's a cycle. So if you look at a circle, at which point does a circle begin and end? So from our point of view, we can only judge time from our reference points. So I am living in Australia. I judge time from my point of view, which is different to yours. We're on different time scales. So everybody's on a different time scale, time circle. And the same for our galaxy, the same for galaxy and Andromeda and all the other galaxies, and then the universe. So these are all interlocking time frames.
So last time you gave us 3 principles that you work on. One is, you said we focus on empiricism, then we use logic or philosophy, and then we go to scripture.
Correct.
So in that hierarchy of prioritization, where this theory or this pulsating universe theory and infinitely into the past, where is this? Is this from logic? Is this from philosophy? Or is this from empiricism or scripture? Well, where is this from, this idea?
Well, actually, the idea is validated by all 3 of these. So there are the whole process of circular time, etc., is mentioned in the sacred texts. So in the Upanishads, in the Vedas, we have the concepts of reincarnation, consciousness as being all-pervading and eternal, and all of this stuff is already laid out rudimentarily in the Upanishads. And then it is elaborated upon by the philosophers using their rational cognitive abilities. And it just so happened, I mean, nowadays, obviously, we use those same concepts and talk in a more modern sense, a pulsating universe. So in the text, it doesn't talk about a pulsating universe per se, but it describes it in terms of periods of srishti, which means srishti is often translated as creation, but it's not a creation, because creation implies a creator and something created, like a potter and a pot. Whereas srishti is a bursting forth, an explosion, and then it expands. And then we have pralaya. Pralaya is an inversion, implosion. And then we have the concept of the singularity, which in Sanskrit is known as bindu. So everything merges back into the bindu, which then srishti, it explodes forth again into the next cycle of creation. And so the texts talk about the explosion, implosion, evolution, involution. And then we can map that onto modern theories of cosmology.
Okay. So anybody else want to come in here?
Yeah, I just want to introduce Brother Abdul Rahman. Assalamu alaikum. brother.
Hi, Sam. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Perfect.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. So much going on here with my kids
No,
and
that's
stuff.
okay.
So I'll do the best I can. I had a question about what's being said right now. If I could just jump right
Yes,
into it.
go ahead. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Because Mr. Rami spoke about something about evil, right? And how his understanding of Hinduism would deal with evil, and it's related to the concept of karma. Am I right? Like,
Yes, correct.
Yeah, and so how does that work under a cyclic, time conception? Like, because you see, if time, if causality is transitive in the sense that, okay, if A causes B and B causes C, then A causes C, then if this entire process is going to just indefinitely repeat itself, then wouldn't the whole concept of causation lose its grip in terms of making sense of evil? Like, if I do evil that causes me to that has a bad outcome, right? And then the problem with that is that, well, if I'm ever going to reform myself, then that goodness that's going to come out is also going to be causing the evil in a cyclical universe. Do you get the idea of what I'm basically saying? Is that everything is causing everything in a cyclical universe. I don't know if that's exactly your understanding or if it applies to your conception of a cyclical universe, but it's just something I just literally just thought of. Like, just maybe we can start with the concept of the transitivity of causation under a cyclical universe. The universe is basically causing itself, right? Am I right?
Well, not exactly. There is we do have the concept, obviously, of Brahman, which is God. Everything is happening within God. God is the matrix. Okay, this is very important to understand the concept of God. So God, Brahman, is that in which everything arises, in which it is sustained, and into which it is ultimately dissolved. So God, what we call Brahman, is the matrix of the universe in which everything is happening. So God manifests. So the universe, to put it in simple terms, is a manifestation or externalization of the energy of God. So the universe is like his body, but he transcends the universe as well. So just as within your body, using that analogy, you have cause and effect. Constantly, everything in your body is moving in cycles. All your cells, all your systems, your blood, your respiration, your digestion, everything is moving in cycles. So like that, everything in the universe is cyclical. So in that sense, it is.
One clarification there. So is there a Brahman for each universe? Or is there a Brahman that sits outside all of these universes at each cycle?
Or if you, again, using the Western cosmology of 2 trillion galaxies, they all exist within Brahman. So Brahman is the totality of being. So which is incomprehensible.
So at each pulsation, each pulsation, this pre-existing transcendent Brahman is always there.
Yes, correct.
And the pulsating of each universe is happening within Brahman's existence. Is that what you're saying? Right.
Right.
So this existence never goes. So what then kickstarts the existence? Because you say Brahman is not involved in that. So what kickstarts the Bindu to do what it needs to do?
So that is the collective karma of all sentient beings that forms a residue at the end of every cycle of projection and in creation and destruction. We are resolved back into that Bindu, and it is activated by the collective karma of all sentient beings, of which there are innumerable sentient beings, not only on this planet, but other planets and other dimensions. So the totality of the aggregate karma of all beings is the force that impels or kickstarts the process of evolution and involution.
Sorry, what is it that kickstarts? So is there such a thing as a prime mover in Hinduism?
The prime mover is not exactly. The concepts are different. What motivates using the imagery of mythology. Right now, this is mythology. It's not metaphysics. but the mythology illustrates the concepts of the metaphysics. So you have the god Brahma, not Brahman. These are two different things.
Okay.
So Brahma is the personified God who creates the universe from his mind. He projects the universe from his mind. That's why we say the world is manasambhava. It is created from the mind of the personal God. But he himself doesn't actually create the world. He is impelled or compelled to create the world because of the aggregate of collective karma that impels.
So there is a Brahma, a creator God for each universe then?
Yes, correct.
Because at the crunch, this Brahma vanishes.
Correct. That vanishes and a new one comes into being at the next cycle.
And does anyone create Brahma?
No. Well, Brahma is an emergent phenomena. Not created.
Where does it emerge from?
From the Brahman.
Okay.
So from the Brahman.
So he emerges. So I get it. So from what you're explaining, Brahma emerges from the residue of the karma from the last crunch that happened, and the emergent property of Brahman, which is the pre-existing transcendence. And there's a coalescing there that happens that then compels this to take place. So this would mean there is no will. It just has to happen.
Correct. So the universe does not have a purpose. And that's why we describe it as Leela. So Leela means a cosmic play or cosmic sport where Brahman manifests or projects himself into being because of joy, because of pure bliss. It's like a dancer. He gets onto the dance floor and starts dancing, not to achieve anything, but just from the joy and the bliss of wanting movement.
Okay.
So that's the closest we can get to the idea, because if you say that God created the world with a purpose in mind, the only reason to create with a purpose is something that is lacking in you. And since God is complete and self-fulfilled, he cannot possibly have a desire, because a desire means that we have something lacking and therefore we need to fulfill that through
we'll get onto that point. But I think going back to the point that Brother Abdul Rahman raised, which is in a universe where everything is cyclical and therefore contingent within itself, cyclically contingent, how does anything actually have a meaningful consequence then in that case?
I think it's also very important at this stage to differentiate between consciousness and matter. So in Hindu metaphysics, the entire universe is comprised of nama and rupa, name and form. So name is the consciousness, the content, whereas rupa is the form. So in terms of the external universe, matter is just simply revolving through cycles. So the atoms that comprise our body at death dissolve and they form other compounds and they carry on. So the hydrogen, nitrogen of the sun, it just dissipates and creates other compounds. So in that sense, there is no purpose. There's just simply ongoing recycling of atoms and molecules and quantum energy, etc. But then consciousness is something else. So we need to differentiate between those two. So the goings on and the revolutions within consciousness are more directed and not contingent, as is matter.
If I may ask, Mr. Rami, what is, so on your view, what exactly is consciousness? And how does it relate to something like identity, like my identity versus your identity?
I don't ever want to get into that. That is a hugely complex subject.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ask is because, okay, I'm a little bit confused, because it seems like if you say like every cycle has its own creator, so is it like just different matter being created indefinitely as in different universes, or the exact same universe just repeatedly creating itself or being created?
No,
because
yeah,
go ahead.
Well, in Hindu metaphysics, we have multiple universes. There's not one single universe. So there are multiple universes, multiple galaxies, and time is measured in billions of years. Even Carl Sagan, the great cosmologist, said that the only culture that came up with time frames that are equivalent to our Western modern concept of time is Hinduism. So, thousands of years ago, the rishis were coming to these concepts of multiple verses and multiple cycles of creation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think our problem as human beings is that we are seeing the world from a geocentric point of view, whereas the earth is the equivalent of a grain of sand on all the combined beaches of the world. So when you're looking at it from that Hubble perspective, that cosmic perspective of the vastness of the universe and time, these are concepts that the human mind cannot comprehend. And likewise, the Godhead who lies behind that whole manifestation is equally incomprehensible. So whatever we say
sorry to interject. Yeah. So how does so in terms of the recreation, right? Because I'm okay with everything you said about time. It just depends on really what the metaphysical implications are that of this are in terms of the questions of some things like, for example, identity and consciousness. So identity, does it exist? And so do we repeat the cycle? Am I going to indefinitely repeat this cycle? Me.
Okay, so each one of us is a moiety or a unit of consciousness. So the fact that you are self-aware is an indication of consciousness. Cogito ergo sum, I think was who said that. I think, therefore I am. So the idea is that we have an awareness of self-identity and we see the body as an object. So we talk about my body, my thoughts, and then the my extends beyond that. My people, my house, my whatever. And so self is a construct. But there are two selves. There's self with a capital S and a self with a small s. So the self with a capital S is your true essence, which is a moiety of divine consciousness, having a human experience. And the small s are the social constructed ideas of self, which are all delusional. So whatever you think of as self is not self.
So in terms of the identity, I think the identity question is important when you deal with karma and dharma.
Correct.
Because karma is basically the consequences of your actions.
Correct.
And if your dharma, which is basically your role as whatever entity you are, so at present, if you were, say, for example, an animal, then one would expect an animal to behave like an animal.
Correct.
So at that point, the identity of, let's say, a dog, for example, is that of a dog. But once that dog then attains a different, body, then that identity changes from, say,
Correct.
from a dog to a man.
Correct.
So you would expect a man to behave like a man and a dog to behave like a dog.
Correct.
And I think the question of identity is quite important. I understand what you meant when you said the self with a capital S and the self with a small s, based on your previous explanation of what the Brahman is, and this divine soul or the universal soul, which I think from the Hindu, understanding from the Hindu perspective is that all beings are a part of that universal soul.
Correct.
Just that they are covered in layers of this quasi-illusion where they feel that they have some sort of identity, but the real identity is always Brahman. Am I right?
Correct. Absolutely. Hashim, you are onto it.
But that raises so I guess the answer to my question is no, I'm not going to experience that sort of like cyclical repetition, right? Because there's really no me, right? So
Correct.
There is going to be some consciousness, but it's not going to be my self-awareness because there's really no actual like ontological reality to my self-awareness, right?
There are two realities. There is the absolute and there's a relative reality. So relatively, at this moment, we are identifying with our bodies. Okay, let's start there. We all identify. If I say, who is Muhammad, who is Mansur, who is Hashim, who is Abdul, you'll all say me, indicating your body. But is this body really you? Every 7 years, every cell in your body has changed. So the body you have today is not the same body that you had 10 years ago. The baby that you are looking at as your son today will have a completely different body in 10 years' time. So the body is
so in that sense, what is it that's sorry? So just so I can understand, in that sense, what is it? If there is repetition, then what is it that's being repeated? Since nothing really has an absolute identity.
Well, as long as you are trapped in this delusion of identity, you are going to continue your cycles of rebirth. But the moment that you realize that I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, and in the words of the Sufis, ana al-haq, once you realize that you are indeed a spark or a moiety or a mode of the divine, and then you lose all that identity and merge back into the Godhead. So
okay, so this raises the interesting question then of the rebirths that you go through.
yes.
Are they finite or infinite?
From an absolute point of view, they are finite. From a relative point of view, they're infinite, because the operating principle is what we call avidya. Avidya means ignorance of our true nature. So once we realize who we are, and this is the whole quest in Hindu metaphysics, is not to find God. The quest is to know who you are, because once you know who you are, then you will know God. But until you realize who you essentially are, that you're not the body, you're not the mind, you're not your thoughts, you're not your beliefs. Once you let all of that go, what remains is God. So for example, we can use a similitude of a movie. A movie consists of light and sound, that's all. But yet it is a whole display, a drama in which we get sucked in. We experience real pain, real joy, happiness, fear, and all the rest of it. But when the light and the sound ceases, what remains is the screen alone. The screen has been the sole reality of the movie. And in the same way, Brahman is the screen, and our lives are projected upon the screen like sound and light. Now, the motor which drives that projector is karma.
Okay, so going back to
that's really.
Go ahead, Abdul Rahman.
But that's really God experiencing different realities, right? It's not because you said it's for us to get to know ourselves, but in reality, we don't really exist. So this kind of identity is an illusion. And if I ask the question, really, who's having the illusion? Well, it's not me because I don't exist. It's really God having an illusion. If you think of it. Yeah. Correct. So in that sense, reality is just an indefinite series of God having multiple illusions.
Well, I wouldn't say God having illusions. I'd rather use the term dream. So we're all figures in the dream of God. So in mythology and iconography, the illustration is Vishnu lying upon a serpent, and he's lying there dreaming, and the world is his dream. So that's a graphic representation of what's actually going on. So we're all dreams in the mind of God.
And would you say he knows he's dreaming?
Absolutely. Because God is all knowing.
I don't know I'm God right now, so but then in one sense, according to you.
Okay. Let me pick it up.
I was just about to ask the question. You mentioned Vishnu on a snake, and I think this is something I came across when I was reading some other topic on the same subject. Was basically this Vishnu, from his navel comes Brahma. Is that true?
Well, it's true in a mythological sense, not true in a metaphysical sense. So again, it's very important to understand Sanskrit here. So the snake is a 1,000-headed snake curled on itself. And the name of the snake is Ananta Sesha. So Ananta means infinity, Sesha means remnant. So that is the remnant from the previous cycle of creation. So that previous cycle of creation, the implosion and the return to singularity in mythology is described as Anantasesha, but it's the remnant from which the next universe is going to spring forth. And Brahma rises from the navel of Vishnu. So Vishnu here, Vishnu means all-pervading. So that which is all-pervading and expansive is Brahman. So the impersonal, formless Brahman is described in mythology and iconography as the personified Vishnu. And from that Vishnu Aka Brahman, the creator emerges to begin to kickstart the work of creation. And
but isn't Brahma a personification of Brahman as well?
Correct. That's all. I'm just describing in the iconography, which is trying to illustrate that Brahman is a personification of Brahman.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm trying to understand is, like, if you have Brahman, if you look at a hierarchy as a hierarchy, you will see Brahman at the top, and then you have the different avatars, the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. But what I fail to understand is that why does after Brahman comes Vishnu and from his navel comes Brahma? Because I was under the impression the creator in this sense, Brahma, would be, I mean, Vishnu is more of a, what do you say, sustainer, isn't it? So it looks like the creator in this sense, I know not in the strictest sense of the term creator, but more of an originator of Brahma, the creator, is actually Vishnu, and Vishnu is the avatar of Brahman.
No, it's not quite like that.
Okay.
The Brahma is the kickstarter, the generator, but Vishnu is the operating energy, and Shiva is the transforming energy. So once Brahma has projected the universe, he retires, and then the energies of conservation and transformation are the ones that continue the cycle going. Now, just to map onto Islam at this stage, in Islam, you have the same metaphysical problem, where on the one hand, Allah is absolute, independent, formless, all of that. And then you use anthropomorphic terminology to describe him. He creates, he does, he speaks, he rises above the throne. And so the Qur'an has got a lot of anthropomorphic attributes of Allah, but at the same time we say that Allah is incomprehensible, transcendent, formless, absolute. So again,
how
even
is,
in
how is
Islam,
it anthropomorphic if we say that Allah is the creator, Al-Khaliq? How is it anthropomorphic? Because to me, the ultimate or the prime mover in this case is Allah. He's the creator. I don't think anyone of the creation has that ability to create like the way Allah does. So I don't think it's anthropomorphic.
But to say creator is a human term. A creator is someone like a potter who creates. So the moment,
could you say that again?
So the moment that you start using terms like creator, destroyer, the judge, that Allah experiences anger, these are human emotions. These are not.
So let me sort of come in here. So we're going a little bit off topic here. So first of all, in Islam, we don't anthropomorphize. This is Allah describing himself, and our theology is very clear on this, is that Allah describes himself, but Allah already says in Surah Ikhlas, he is nothing like creation, which means Allah has the ability to describe himself. Maybe he has a feet, he sits above, etc. But there is nothing in creation that we can liken it to. And this is our understanding.
That's correct. But the point that I'm making is in philosophy of religion, when the moment that you ascribe human actions or emotions to a divinity, then you are anthropomorphizing.
But Islam does not do this. So Islam does not do this.
Yeah. It seems like it's
whether Quran does it or whether theologians do it. The moment that you say God speaks, God does, God creates, God moves, these are all anthropomorphic terms.
They are, but
Mr. Rami, I just want to ask a question. So, but what's the problem with anthropomorphizing according to your view? Because according to your view, it's
absolutely
nothing, right?
Because
Yeah, because for you, really, I am God. I mean, at least for us, you see, we can maintain some kind of transcendence. If you want to say there's an analogy between creation and God, we can say that. It depends on what you mean by anthropomorphizing, and discussions in philosophy of religion about this are extensive. But then at the end of the day, for you, I guess the issue would be that creation is, in a way, God. So that just I don't know if you guys got past this, but it just goes back to my initial concern. If that's what's happening, then what really is the repetition that's going on? And I was wondering if for you God is all-knowing. And if he is all-knowing and I am God, then how come I am not all-knowing? That's also a concern I would have.
That's very simple to answer. Okay, coming back to, we have to make this clear understanding that all religions anthropomorphize. Whether it is, you read the Bible, where God is described in exactly anthropomorphic terms, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, we all do that. And we all claim at the same time that God is transcendent, God is absolute, God is formless. So you have a concept of God with form, God without form. How you reconcile these are found within the metaphysics of each and every religion. And so the way that we deal with this, we understand that, and that's why I described earlier, the anthropomorphization in Hinduism is mythology, as it is in all religions, but Abrahamics don't agree to that. And then we have the pure metaphysics. And then these
so
two
Rami,
so
just to clarify,
hang on. Muhammad,
so I want to clarify a term. I want to clarify one term.
I want to come back to Abdul Rahman.
Yeah, you can come back to it. So by mythology, do you mean untrue? Is that what you mean by mythology?
Mythology is not untrue. That is a misunderstanding of the academic use of the term mythology. Mythology is a description of the content of the collective unconscious, and it is described through stories. So every religion consists of three parts. There is the theology, the metaphysics, then there is the mythology, and the ritual or practice. Every religion.
Mythology is not reality. Mythology never was reality, right?
Mythology is absolute reality, but it is reality described in humanistic terminologies. So we use images that are available to us as human beings, because human beings need to communicate through symbols. That is what we do. And that is what makes us unique from all other animal species, is that humans can use symbols. And our entire communication is through the means of symbols. So in order to describe metaphysical or convey metaphysical concepts, we use symbology and narrative. And those symbols and narratives with which we are using to convey absolute truths are called mythology. Now, coming back to Abdul Rahman's question about, it comes back again to consciousness. Consciousness, God is absolute consciousness. So in our previous session, I said that in Hindu metaphysics, God consists of five essential attributes. One is chit, which is consciousness. The other is sat. Sat means being. So it's being and consciousness. The third quality is ananda, which is bliss, love, compassion, absolute. And then we have two more, which is amalam, which is freedom from every possible concept of negativity, and ananta, which means infinity. So these are the five qualifying attributes of what we call the Godhead or Brahman. Now, all of us have those qualities, three of those qualities within us, Sat Chit Ananda. And as human beings in our conditioned state, we qualify those as Asti, which means I am, your being. Bhati means your ability to comprehend, to your intelligence. And Priya means love. So every sentient being, even animals, have this Asti, Bhati, Priya, which are the reflexes of Sat Chit Ananda. So it's, for example, again, I'm trying to use metaphors that can explain this. In a building, in a multi-story building, you have one energy pulsating through that building, which is the electricity grid. But that same electricity manifests in units of light bulbs, computers and everything else, but it is the same energy of that's being produced by the generators. So all the consciousness within the universe are the consciousness of God, Brahman, appearing in different units, and those units are what we call self.
But that would mean that he isn't continuously all knowing, right? Or is he always all knowing? Because right now I'm not all knowing, right? So
that's because you identify with your body. You're in a state of what we call avidya, or spiritual nescience or ignorance. The idea that
by you you mean God. So you're saying right now God is identifying with his body, so he doesn't know.
You're confusing absolute and relative. So
relative what? Sorry.
Let me give you another example, right? I'm in Australia and you're in England. Mm-hmm. Well, not you, but the other boys are in England. So I'm upside down relative to the earth.
I get that. But what's relative in the context of what I'm asking?
So wherever I am on planet Earth, I'm always living on a flat Earth, even though the Earth is round. So from an absolute perspective, the Earth is a globe. From my relative perspective, it's a flat area. Wherever I am, North Pole, South Pole, it's always flat. So these are two different perspectives. So
but you're just explaining what relativity is. I understand that, but I guess the concern is in this particular, discussion about God's omniscience versus an individual consciousness's ignorance. How does that apply? What's relative here, and which is the absolute?
Well, from an absolute point of view, nothing exists. It's all just consciousness bliss. From a relative point of view, we see difference, but that difference is not there. Again, I'm trying to explain to you that from a universal perspective of the 2 trillion galaxies, Earth is insignificant as a grain of sand. And when you use that analogy to understand the vastness and incomprehensible nature of God, and we are simply tiny, we are like sparks of a fire compared to the sun. We are photons.
Yeah, but see, I understand all of that, and so nothing actually exists. The reason it doesn't exist, though, is because everything really is just God having a dream. Now, if God is having a dream and the identity of the person, or whatever you want to call it, if you don't want to call it person, the identity having a dream is in a state of unawareness, then that identity is in that state unaware and ignorant. So that's not relative. What's relative is the existence of that, dream world, because it exists in a more like illusory sense, as you put it. But really, the dreamer is in reality ignorant in this state of mind that I am having right now.
No, use the example of the sun and a photon. The sun is always bright, illuminated, refulgent. The photon may become obscured, and it is no longer refulgent or bright, but that does not mitigate the natural effulgence of the sun. So God can never, his state of knowledge can never be obscured by the infinitesimal state of being of a sentient self, a sentient.
Yes, but is he? So okay, but so the sun, the brightness of the sun and the rays, those exist simultaneously. So for you, does God have different centers of consciousness in which he is ignorant in some and knowledgeable in others? And if he does have different centers of consciousness, just so you can answer both at the same time, then I mean, is that like multiple persons? Or because the way we understand a person having different personalities is that, you have different personalities at different times. But right now you're saying God basically has different centers of consciousness. If you're going to say he's both all-knowing and ignorant at the exact same time, then are those two different centers of awareness in God?
You're looking at it, it's scales of size that you're missing here. Come back to the sun. How many photons exist within the sun? How many helium or hydrogen atoms are in the sun? And if
Yeah, I
you
mean, I
take-
don't know. Yeah, versus.
Well, exactly. Nobody knows. It's impossible
Yeah.
to calculate.
Yeah.
So if you look, I'm trying to show you that there is a perspective, the absolute perspective of size, and there is our infinitesimal perspective as a photon of light. We are talking about the refulgence and brilliance of the sun. So there is no question of God becoming obscured by ignorance or
Yeah.
having pockets of
But
ignorance.
it's not a question of size for me, right? So it can be, our existence can be infinitesimally insignificant in relation to God's
Correct.
absolute. That's not a problem, but it is a reality on your view that God is having this dream or this illusion where each and every one of us, our actual absolute identity is God. So in my current state of mind, however insignificant it is in comparison to God's absolute existence, my current state of limited mind is God's current state
No.
of limited mind.
No.
Then who's having the dream?
You yourself are in a state of illusion.
I don't
Another-
exist. God exists, right? Remember,
Yeah, but-
didn't we agree on that?
Okay, coming back, I mean, I can just bring you back to the same similitudes that I've explained before. You have a screen and you have a projection upon that screen. The movie keeps on changing, but the screen remains the same. So in the same way, the entire cosmos, again, let me stress, the scale of size, we're talking about 2 trillion galaxies versus planet Earth. And we need to keep these two perspectives in mind. So the Earth is insignificant. You, as a experiencing individual, are insignificant compared to the totality of being. So you are only a photon of light in the sun, which is God. And you yourself need to realize that you are a spark of light. You are a being.
Yeah, but Mr. Rami, I'm afraid this isn't really answering my question, because you see, there could be a changing, there could be frames of, like in the case of a movie, frames that are constantly moving on a static, screen. But in this case, so we have to really tie in the analogy to the question: what is static in this case? You want to say, because we're asking about God's knowledge. So what is static? So there is something static about God's knowledge. Now in this case, what's moving? Because we've already established that whatever is moving is still God experiencing other things. So really, the question is, I acknowledge all that. The question is that in those states, however insignificant and infinitesimally small they are, there is a state of mind that is really not mine, because I do not exist. In fact, it is God who's experiencing this. So there is a real state of mind, however relatively insignificant it is to God's absolute existence. This state of mind is ignorant, and this state of mind is God's. So we would have to say that God is, in one sense, all-knowing right now in this part. If we cut out this particular frame of time, God is all-knowing. And at the same time, if my current limited ignorant identity is the identity of God, then at the same time, God is ignorant. So I don't think there's really any escaping that, unless we get into some different concept of identity.
No, the only way that I can answer that question again is from comparing the refulgence of the sun to a ray of light. So the ray of light may be dark, it may be obstructed, but the sun is never obstructed. And that is the point.
Okay, so can we tie that into God?
Hang on. We're getting out of hand here. We're trying to demystify Hinduism here. So I'm bringing you back to where the philosophical analysis, the metaphysical analysis of Hinduism begins. It doesn't begin with God. God is irrelevant to our lives. Remember, God is irrelevant.
Yeah, but we're asking questions about God right now. So to understand.
The questions about God are always subject to dispute, because it is incomprehensible. And our speech cannot describe God adequately. That is one fundamental proposition in Vedanta. We say that yata vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha, that the mind recoils from the absolute, unable to comprehend and unable to express. So in Hindu metaphysics, we begin with self-knowledge. Atma Bodha is the path. So we begin with, who am I? That is the first question to ask. Not who is God, because God is incomprehensible. We begin with ourselves.
Yeah, but
And the
Mr. Rami, we
problem-
can move on. We can move on to a different point. But then, so this point may be insignificant to you, but in our understanding of Hinduism, it's significant to us. But this sounds an awful lot like what certain Christian apologists or Christians, like lay Christians, do. Many of them don't, but a lot of them do appeal to mystery, kind of like at the end of a discussion. I mean, if we started with the idea that, you know, it may seem incoherent from our perspective, but in reality we just can't explain it, then we don't have to give all these analogies, because as I've tried to express, the analogies don't work, because in every single instance we're going to take it back to the issue of identity and consciousness and who really is ignorant and who really is all-knowing, and there's going to be incoherence there. Well, in any state of incoherence that someone brings forward with regard to my religion or yours or anyone else's, we can just throw our hands up and say, you know, it's mysterious, and we can move on. But I think that's just a conversation stopper, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to compare religions, and we're trying to assess the rationality or lack thereof of certain. Oh, he's
I
gone.
think there's some device connection issue with
Okay,
Pandit Rami.
we can.
I think he's
Can
having some connection issues, so it's just
Yeah, we had some issues earlier on actually, so we'll just wait
let's
for
just
Rami
wait for
to
Pandit
connect
Rami
again.
to come back.
But
Right,
while he's doing that, let's just take a little breather out into the comments. So what I would strongly recommend, folks that are out there, is please do remain respectful with the comments. I've seen some very strange comments coming up there. Please don't do that. It sort of takes away from the cordiality of our discussion, and it's not respectful. The majority of you are, alhamdulillah, very, very respectful. But just for the one or two that are out there, please do manage your comments, please.
Back.
Are you okay there, Panditji?
Yeah, I don't know what's happening here. Can you hear me?
I think, yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you perfectly.
Well, we can't see you anymore,
I
unfortunately.
don't know what happened to that.
Yeah, it's okay. It's connection issues.
Paid your broadband bill. That's what it is.
So coming back to what Abdul Rahman has said, that until we actually get onto comparison of views, and you explain to me exactly what your alternative view is so that I can refute that. At the moment, I'm just being on the defensive. So I'm just trying to explain to you what our view is.
Oh, sure. I mean, we could. I'm not trying to be combative or argumentative or anything, but I mean, we can move on to another point. But if you want to know the Islamic view on God's knowledge, I mean, there really isn't this issue, because God is God and creation is creation. God is all-knowing. I am not all-knowing, and we don't have the similar issue. Maybe there are different issues you might want to bring up, but if you want to compare it on this particular point of identity, then I don't think really that issue arises with the Islamic conception of God. It does arise with the Christian understanding of the incarnation. Certain understandings. Yeah.
If I can quickly interject here, because I think what we need to understand is we might be talking cross purposes sometimes, because the terminologies, which might be the same, but we define them differently. So I'll give an example. For example, in Islam, we believe in something which we call the nafs, which you call the self or consciousness or awareness, however you want to put it. Now, in Islam, what we believe is that this self, if that self sins, then that self is the one who is accountable for it. However, in Hinduism, from what I understood, like everyone or every sentient being, every soul out there is somehow at the end the Atman, which is one with the Brahman. So ultimately, everyone is God. Yes. Now, correct. The question is, if the self, if yourself or myself, or even someone like in the Hindu Mahabharata, like, Arjun, when he was, for example, he wanted to fight in the war and he didn't want to basically fight his own kin. So he was reluctant. And Krishna tells him that this is your dharma, so you must fight. And these all things are just bodies which are just illusion. So don't worry about the consequences. If I made any mistake in that narrative, please correct me. But what I want to understand is that in Hinduism, when you talk about sin, so for example, if Arjuna kills, say for example, his acharya, Drona, which I know he did not, it's somebody else who did. So in Hinduism, one of the worst sins is to be disrespectful of your acharya, of your guru and your parents. So imagine in a war, if somebody who is on the opposite side, who is the enemy, and that happens to be maybe your parent or your teacher, yes, and if you kill that person because that's your duty, because in this case Arjuna is a Kshatriya, and it's his predefined duty to basically fight. And the question now, there's kind of a conundrum here, or kind of a a problem, because on one aspect you cannot disrespect, let alone kill your teacher. On the other hand, it is your duty to fight because you're a warrior, you're from the Kshatriya caste. So it's kind of a conundrum. So I'm trying to understand this self, which basically kills the other self. So in other words, if everybody is God, so it's like one God killing another God, or is it, where does the accountability lie? Basically, that's a key question.
Okay, so there's two things here. Again, I want to stress the absolute and relative. So from an absolute perspective, nothing is happening. God is playing God. God is playing the both teams. God is the cricket bat. God is the cricket ball. So from an absolute perspective, that is a different matter. But from a relative perspective, we're all interacting as identifying with our mind-body complex. Now, when it comes to dharma, which is what we are leading into now, dharma is, the definition of dharma is dharayati iti dharma. Dharma is that which maintains a person and is that which brings the maximum good to humanity and human welfare. That which contributes to our material and our spiritual well-being, that is dharma. So dharma is one of those words that you cannot translate into English. It does not mean religion or duty. It means many things. So what you're talking about there is your jati dharma, or your dharma as a functionary within society. But the higher dharma is the dharma of ethics. That and the ethic of dharma is defined as any act which intentionally causes suffering to another is adharma, and any act which intentionally brings joy and happiness to another being is what is dharma. So that is you've got the ethical dharma, and then you've got your professional dharma. So from a ethical point of view, Dronacharya was fighting against Arjuna and was determined to kill Arjuna. Even though he was the teacher, he would have, as his duty as fighting in the enemy's army, was to kill Arjuna. So Arjuna had to defend himself. So historically speaking, in India, many Hindus served in Mughal armies, and many Muslims served in Hindu armies. And as soldiers dedicated to their respective kings or rajas, they would have fought their co-religionists in those battles and killed them. And that is what they had to do. That is their duty as a soldier. So in the case of the Mahabharata, they were enemies, and therefore they had to fight. So even if your father comes to attack you, you have to kill him. If your brother attacks you, you kill your brother. But you don't willfully go out and murder your brother because you want his inheritance.
Okay,
Right.
So the question still remains. I mean, where does the accountability lie? So, for example, let's say in the case of a murder, which you just mentioned, yes, if somebody wrongfully kills someone, that is adharma. That is something which is a sin. Now, because this self is still in this world, which it thinks is an illusion, did the murder take place? And number two, if it did take place, then who is accountable for it? If it did not take place, why do we even bother with something like dharma and adharma?
Okay, so from an absolute point of view, nothing took place. But from a relative point of view, you have intended to kill, you have done the act, and therefore you reap the karma of that consequence. As long as you are identified with your mind, body, and your actions, then the karma adheres to you. But the
that's an
moment that
illusion,
you
right? That's not
realize,
real. I don't know what you mean by absolute. To me, absolute means something that is real. That is something which we will be accountable for if it's real. But if it's in a dream, say, for example, if you dreamt that you killed your neighbor, for example, no law in this country or even in the Amazon forest would actually hold you accountable for it, because that not happen in reality. And
okay,
you see,
so
my question is this: did the murder take
I
place in
understand your
reality or not?
question.
Yeah.
I understand your question. I'm trying to explain to you that our Hindu metaphysical concept between absolute, which is called Paramartika Satya, and Vyavaharika Satya. So I gave you the example of relativity, right? The earth is round, the globe, but it appears as flat. The absolute Paramartika Satya is the globe is, the earth is a globe, and I am in actual fact upside down. That is absolute truth. But that's not the truth that I experience. The truth that I experience is that I am standing upright and that the earth is flat. So these are two perspectives of the one thing.
So from your,
the reality is the earth is not flat, isn't it? It's your perception, which I understand. Nobody's saying that the earth is flat. But when we are talking about accountability, you cannot equivocate this relative world, or sorry, this relative perception of the world that you're having. In reality, when a murderer kills somebody else, where does relativity come into play? It does not. It is either really murder or it is a dream.
It is a real murder, but the person who is committing the murder is identified with themselves. They have an identity that I am Adolf Hitler. I am killing these people because I have a desire to kill these people and to rule the world. That is self-identification. But in an absolute sense, that Adolf Hitler is still a spark of consciousness, and that spark of consciousness is still part of God.
So is Adolf Hitler ultimately, are you saying Adolf Hitler is ultimately God?
Not Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler is a body.
But when you say, wait, when you say the self, does Adolf Hitler identify himself as somebody, as a dream, as something unreal, or as real? Because this is a core of the question. You are Hashim. You need to understand who is the one accountable. Is it God or is it Hitler?
There is Hashim.
Yes.
He's sitting in front of me talking.
We have one identity called Hashim, yes.
Yes, you are identified as your body, and you.
Well, he has a person. We have we call it person, right? So we have a person called Hashim. Okay.
There's a person called Hashim. You have a brother. You have a sister. You have a mother. You have all of these. But in actual fact, what are you? That is the question.
Okay, who are you? In Islam, what we call is the nafs. So I am the self, which is the nafs,
correct,
which I will be accountable for my actions, not somebody else. Now, what you're saying is you're saying
Hashim, or is it Hashim, or is it something else?
The nafs is unique to each person.
Nafs is unique. So I've got a unique identity.
Yes.
And that's the reason only I can be accountable for my actions, not somebody else.
Who,
but
Hashim?
In the case of Hinduism,
are you talking about Hashim is accountable?
Yes. When I do something wrong, I'm accountable.
But you're identifying the nafs with your body, and this is why Islam believes in resurrection of the body.
That's not true. Even after I die, it is my nafs which will be accountable on the day of judgment.
You see, look at the words you're using. You are saying my nafs. So the nafs is something that you possess. You Hashim possess.
So it's when I say me means my identity. So let me just rephrase it. Earlier, when I said the nafs is your consciousness and your awareness and your identity, this is what I meant. So when we die, obviously our body disintegrates. Yes.
Yes.
But the thing is, on the day of judgment, Allah is going to ask us, like, what are the things that we have done? And He's going to confirm with us based on the records of what the angels have written, that you have done so, and so. So it will be the same nafs which I had in dunya that I will be then able to relate to with my, with whatever new body I have in the akhirah, that this same nafs is now being judged on the day of judgment. So you see, in the case of Hinduism, the problem is, like Brother Abdul Rahman has asked from the beginning, the question is of identity. In your case, the identity jumps from one body to another. So the dog becomes a man, the man becomes, when he reaches moksha, he becomes one with the Brahman. Sorry, say again?
No. This is again a misunderstanding.
Okay, go on, explain.
See, in our conversation, you have said my nafs.
Means
I
me.
reject
Means
the
me.
idea of
When I say my nafs, I mean me.
Right. This is the
I
correct
think you should say
terminology.
I am the nafs. Suppose we said I am the nafs.
Correct. Mansur is now on the right path. He is understanding Hinduism. So I am not Rami Sivan. I am a Satchidananda. I am consciousness, Asti Bhati Priya, as I explained before. I am just temporarily having this body. When this body is no longer serviceable, I will leave this body and I will enter into another body. So there is a transition. I will move out of this body. So I don't have a soul. I don't have an Atma. I am the Atma that moves into the next body.
But the
Yeah,
Atma
I
is
understand
This
that.
time you
But
have the
the-
concept of resurrection. How does that work? Are dead bodies resurrected?
no,
Or will you
we
have
don't
another
resurrect body. No,
No,
that's
the
not-
body is not, the soul.
That's a Christian
the
concept.
soul is
This is not an
resurrected.
Islamic concept.
So the soul
The
is now
bodies do not
resurrected. On
get
the day of
resurrected.
judgment, Allah will give it a unique body. Okay, on the day of judgment, we will have a different body to the one that we have today. But again, the term body now we are talking about something of the other world. So maybe it is just to use that language to understand that we'll have a separate, covering for the soul, if you want to put it that
So
way.
bodies don't climb out of the graves.
No. We don't believe in zombies. No, we don't believe in zombies.
No zombie resurrection.
No,
Yeah,
not like Mark has in the Bible. No.
And this is what I mean. When you actually reincarnate as something else, you lose your identity from your previous nature, whatever it was. Am I right?
Yes,
In Hinduism.
because of ignorance, because of avidya. You don't remember what you did in your previous life. You just move on into the next body and you continue your evolution.
Okay.
And that's when the function of religion comes in, that we educate you in the ethics and morality of being a human.
So
What
this
are
is the
the
topic I
And
want
that is a good question. Actually, I wanted to, that actually leads to my next question. Earlier you said that it is your karma which decides the consequences in the next life. Now, the question remains, if you don't remember, say, for example, a child is born with a disease, or a child is born maybe without a limb. And that might be, I don't know if this is what you believe, this is due to the karma in their previous life. Yeah?
Correct.
The consequences of the karma of the previous life. If the child does not remember and the child does not know, the child throughout its life is going to suffer this consequence without realizing what it had, without even remembering what it had done previously. Isn't that unjust?
No, because it is suffering the consequences. Then the function of dharma and the function of teaching is to explain to people that what you have in this life is not because of some God who has capriciously created you faulty, that this is a fault of your own, but you should not become a victim to it. You should overcome it and deal with the situation in the best possible way. And this is the function of dharma, is to give you a framework to overcome your victimhood and to become a hero and to become and to evolve spiritually. Now, those who don't have spiritual teachings, they will see themselves as victims of some capricious God who has just out of whatever reason has created this unequal world.
I just have a question, Panditji. on this.
How do you exculpate a creator from the evil in his creation?
Who
Panditji,
created the evil? Are you saying the humans created the evil?
No, the world, there is no evil or good or evil in the world per se.
Yeah.
The world is neutral. But
So if
our
I-
perception of the world is either good or evil depending upon our conditioning.
Yeah.
But
can
the
you
world
just
itself
clarify,
is neutral.
Panditji, on this issue? Because when we talk about the concept of justice and injustice, it seems like there isn't any meaningful concept that we can even talk about justice because of issues of karma. So take the example of a rapist and the victim who got raped. In this case, is there any injustice that's been committed by
Of course.
the victim? Where is
Look,
the injustice?
Again, coming back to the concept, dharma and karma work together. So dharma is that which benefits another being. So a rapist, through their previous negative conditioning, have again, this we're leading now onto Hindu psychology, which is a huge subject on its own. But we are born with a certain mental conditioning, and every father and every mother knows that their children are born with content. No child is born with a tabula rasa, a blank slate. Every single child is born with content in their personality, in their mind. And some of those personalities are psychopathic personalities. Few, it's not the majority, very few. But that is due to their previous conditioning from their previous birth, and they do wicked things. Now, that is one aspect of it. Now, why did the victim get raped or murdered or whatever? We would say it is because of some previous karma that they have done. But what I'm saying, what I said earlier, this exculpates God from involvement. Because if you say God is the absolute creator, then he created the psychopath, and he created the victim, and he created the act of the criminal act, and all of this without a purpose, as a test. Now, this is what I assume that you guys would say, that this is a test. But if God is omniscient and he is a creator, why does he need to test? Surely he knows the outcome.
Panditji, so in your view, the rape victim is actually being punished for what she has done in her previous...
It's not punishment. Karma is not punishment. It's consequence. There's a different thing.
So the victim has done something to deserve this in a previous life?
In the previous life.
So you cannot blame
don't know what, and it's not for us to judge. It is for us to apply compassion. You see, this is where karma works with dharma. A person falls into a drain. They fall into the drain because of their own karma. But our dharma is to remove that person and save their life. I'm a nurse, right? I work in a hospital. I see patients coming in every day that are responsible for their condition through smoking, alcohol, lifestyle. But do I judge them on that? It is not for me to judge. I treat every single one of my patients with the same love, the same compassion, the same kindness, whatever is their cause. And I have treated murderers, but I don't judge them on what they've done. That is my dharma, is not to judge others, but to do what I can to make the world a better place and to alleviate suffering wherever I find it.
So Panditji, if I could just come in here. So this is a big discussion.
I mean,
okay.
How long are we going? It's 9 o'clock, by the way.
Yeah, well, probably another, how long more?
Yeah, we can take Q&A in about half an hour. Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God.
Well, I just want to get to the bottom of this point. So
this is your karma, Sheikh.
Yeah. So one of the comments that you made.
What have I done to deserve this?
Okay, so one of the comments you made in this idea of dharma,
yes,
is you said it's about doing good or doing evil or bad, and there's a balance that you need to maintain. Now,
yes.
this actually brings a sort of a meta-ethical question now, which is the question of what is good, and where is good, and how is good foundationally premised on what meta-ethical framework is it based on, and how is it anchored?
Oh, that's very easy to answer. Good is that which contributes to the welfare of the maximum number of people.
I mean, that's a very utilitarian perspective.
Correct. It is absolutely correct. Good is utilitarian.
Okay, so the maximum good of the example that Brother Mansur just gave, if 10 people decided to have their way with a woman, then surely they're doing good.
No, because they're causing suffering to the woman.
But 10 people have enjoyed themselves.
No, but they've caused suffering.
But that's under utilitarianism.
They have enjoyed themselves. No, but that is not their good. That is their again, objective good. One has to, it's subtle. I mean, questions of ethical philosophy are really subtle. So I'll give you another example. The famous example, if you're in a train car that is running down a hill and you lose control of the brakes and there's a fork in the road, on the railway tracks. On one side, there's a bunch of men working. On the other side, there's a bunch of children playing. You can either kill the kids or kill the men. What do you do? How do you solve that ethical conundrum? So when it comes to the philosophy of ethics,
how would you solve Hinduism?
Complex.
How would you solve it under Hinduism?
That's a question for the individual. But you can make an argument. If you're arguing ethical philosophy, you can make an argument for killing the kids and for killing the men.
Exactly. So it's relative to your situation at the time.
So it's relative to your situation. But the goal, again, it comes to the intention. And so intention has two facets. There's personal intention, what is good for me, and what is good for others. So Dharma always takes into account what is the good of the collective, not the individual. So if 10 guys rape one woman, that is their individual good, not the good of the community or the good of others. And we cannot achieve our own personal happiness through causing unhappiness and suffering to others.
Okay.
So it's nuanced. It's not...
Okay. No, fair enough. So the key there then is...
At this point, Islamically, I mean, when we have two situations where both of them seems to be evil or not good, there's a principle in Islam we call aqall al-sharrain, the lesser of the two evil. So, of course...
yes, I would agree with that.
Proposed from there. But you see, at the end of the day, when I just want to come back on this whole issues of is the Brahman, the ultimate, the impersonal, the ultimate true being, in control of the karma, or is karma outside of these beings' control? What's the view in your understanding?
What's the deal? Okay, the deal is that the Brahman set the laws of the cosmos into motion, and then he retired. So gravity operates without God's interference. The cycles of nature operate without God's interference. He just sets the whole thing into motion and the whole thing works. So likewise, the law of karma has been set into motion and operates without God's interference. Now, we do say there is a concept of grace or kripa in Hinduism. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarva dharmam parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhyo moksheshan mashucha, which means he who takes refuge in me alone, I will free him from all his karmic propensities, abandoning all types of self-initiated means to achieve liberation. So all of us are trying of our own to try to achieve salvation. Now, once we give up that self-effort and rely on God, i.e. Krishna, then he will release us from our karma. So there is a concept of grace. Hang on. So there is a concept of grace within Hinduism. So it's not just that karma keeps on operating endlessly without end. There is also the concept that God can release us from our karma. But not, you see, karma is also three types of karma you have to understand. There's prarabdha karma, which is the karma which has given birth to this current incarnation. The fact that you are born male in England, blah, blah, all your circumstances are due to your prarabdha karma. Then the karma that you are performing at this moment is called kriyaman karma. So this kriyaman karma feeds back into what is called sanchita karma, which is your bank account. And then a small dividend from that bank account will produce the current birth. And so the cycle continues. Now, when we talk about the grace of God releasing us from karma, the grace of God can burn the sanchita karma, the accumulated karma, but it cannot prevent the prarabdha karma, which is already running. So even though we may have the grace of God for liberation, our lives will continue their course of goodness or suffering or neutrality until we die.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Is it
Yes.
Is it the case that so you go through many stages or many different lives and stuff like that? Is it so you go through, let's say, I don't know, like let's say 1,000 different cycles or different lives, and then that repeats, or is it like a linear, indefinite, like chain of different lives that goes forward in the future. So is it like a chain of different lives that just keeps repeating over and over, or is it just
it's an evolution? It's not just random. It's evolution. So the self, the Atman, is refining itself. So it starts off in gross matter, lower form of life, and then gradually evolves through our species until we become human beings. And as human beings, we are now evolving further to become God-like.
and then you restart the cycle again, right?
No. Once you achieve moksha, once you achieve fana, you are united back with the Godhead. You return to your source. You return to Godhead, and that ends the cycle.
But Mr. Rami, that's really confusing me. Forgive me.
Oh, don't be confused, Abdul Rahman.
Because you see, the problem here is there's no me. Who's united? It's just God. So nobody's united. So is there any? So the question is, after this this unity occurs, is there any further things that are going to happen? Different cycles? It's indefinite, right?
No, it's not indefinite. I told you. Now listen very carefully, Abdul Rahman.
Okay.
The best I can explain to you is a photon of light descends into matter and gradually evolves through different forms until it finally reaches a stage of enlightenment, and then it returns to the source. That is it. Yeah. Now, so whether it will... Now, whether
all I want to know, just to make it easier for you, just because this is just I just want just a simple answer for this. So at the end, everything is going to return to that pure oneness of God, and then nothing else is going to happen. No more cycles.
Yeah, Abdul Rahman, we are going around in cycles. I've explained this to you already a number of times, and we've already been on this for a couple of hours now. Don't worry about that metaphysics. That is not concerning us. Whether you come back or not is not our matter. That is for the ultimate omniscient Brahman to decide. So we should leave all.
There's no coming back. So it seems like that's the answer. But because you're answering the questions, Mr. Rami, but then it seems like when I find them problematic, all of a sudden we need to not worry about them. No, but because you told me we are going back, we are uniting. So we can not worry about it from the get-go.
But then, again, you're speculating. Then you're making speculation, saying, oh, well, what happens when we get back there? So we're still on the journey. There can either be an answer or there's no answer. Yeah, okay. So there maybe you could say, like, okay, we don't know if there's another cycle. That's fine.
I could ask you the same question. I could say, okay, you go to Jannat. And in Jannat, this Qur'an describes very hedonistic activities going on in Jannat. What happens in Jannat? Is there day or night? Some hadith will say that there's day and night. Is there time in Jannat, or is Jannat timeless?
So, Mr. Rami, I could either give you an answer, or I could tell you I don't know. But the problem is, so if it's concerned with a question of coherence or lack of coherence, and we're making positive statements, and there seems to be an issue of coherence, then the questions are relevant, right? But if there's no answer, that's okay. But then we need to realize what consequences our commitments take us to. If there are any consequences to it that take us to a place of incoherence, then that's a concern, because most people want their worldviews to be coherent. So when we say I unite back with the one, and I in fact am the one, I have that question of identity. If you're going to tell me that no, there's nothing else going to happen with you because you're uniting back, but at the end of the day, you've been telling me that I really am just God. So that distinction isn't really clear, but we can move away from that. If it's mysterious, it's fine. It's okay. I wanted to ask you about questions about this relative truth and absolute truth and stuff like that. If you don't mind,
that is very complex metaphysics. But the difference that I understand it is that we as Hindus are happy to say I do not know, but you as Muslims know the truth.
We're happy to say that too.
You guys make affirmative statements which you cannot prove. And
brother, you're making affirmative statements too. You're making affirmative statements about the nature of morality and judgment and karma. But in some places you say, I don't know. I'm happy to do that too. But the question is really what are our commitments, and can we assess the coherence of our worldviews based on those commitments? So we can't escape everything. Yeah.
Ya Abdul Rahman, Isma'ani.
Yes. Faddal.
we have two different perspectives. Islam begins with God, right? We do not begin with God. We begin with me, human beings. What is our problem? Our problem has got nothing to do with God. Our problem has got, what are we here for? Who am I? What am I doing here? And how do I live my life? So when we talk about Sanatana Dharma, the emphasis of Hinduism is not on God. The emphasis of Hinduism is on how I live my life.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
So
But
there
on
are
that
two
question, maybe very,
So
very quickly
metaphysics-
before I
hang on. So metaphysics is for metaphysicians. How do we explain to common people? We don't discuss, even within Hinduism, we do not discuss these metaphysical concepts with common people. This is for philosophers to discuss amongst themselves. But what we discuss is, what are the practical implications? How do I get through my day? How do I live my life today? This is what concerns people. Not about Jannat and what's going to happen up there and how many cups of wine you're going to drink a day or how many Hor al-Ain you'll be enjoying. None of that is relevant.
You sound jealous, Panditji.
Here and now.
Yeah, that's fine, but the concept of really, again, so based on your explanation of your meta ethics and stuff like that, it doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with Hur al-Ain because it's just enjoyment, and I don't think you provided a meta ethic that would necessarily like disagree with that. But you said that it's really about us and the way we lead our lives. So I wanted to ask a very quick question about free will and the nature of free will on your view, because it seemed like you said that God doesn't have a choice in putting this plan forward. Now, is it really the case that individually us, which is at the end of the day God, do we have libertarian choice in our actions, in our choices? Do we really have the option to choose between different,
What do you think? Do you think that we have free will?
Yeah, I do.
And how does this free will manifest?
How does it manifest? What do you mean? It's so libertarians will tell you. Sorry.
Okay, while Abdul Rahman is doing that, I just wanted to ask this question. You said it doesn't matter to God. I think it does, because ultimately this dharma which you talk about is something that has the source of that is always going to be God. Doesn't matter which religion. No. So you're saying the rules which make up the rules which distinguish dharma from adharma, is this man-made or is this something comes from God?
Everything is man-made. So we human beings can decide for ourselves. So dharma changes. So dharma is not something absolute. Dharma is something that changes.
That's man-made?
There are certain principles of dharma, and I'll describe it. Paropakara punyaya papaya parapidanam. So this is the essence. Para upakara, to do good to others is punya. To do harm to others is papa. This is a summary of dharma. Now, how we put that into practice changes with time and circumstances and our position in society. So we say para upakara. So a soldier who's going to battle to protect the country, his duty is to kill others. So then we get into this whole concept of ethical theology that we were talking about earlier. What is right, what is wrong? And it is for us human beings to decide for ourselves what is right and wrong. We do not believe that God imposes or demands or commands a set of ethical values on us. The principle is there. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That is a golden rule. Now it is up to us to actually implement that in different circumstances and how we live that. But the details are not dictated by God.
You're saying, because to me, dharma means basically it's your religion, it's your faith. It's what you believe in to be the morals within your religion.
Morals,
so
correct.
If you're going to tell me that, okay, the commander of the soldier says, go and shoot the innocent, go and shoot anyone you want. It's the chain of command which is going to be ultimately responsible, or is it the soldiers who are going to be responsible? Does the soldier have the right to say, I don't want to kill the innocent? Or is it just a case of Hitler saying, okay, kill all the Jews in the gas chamber? And that's as far as, because that is their command from the chain of command. That's their dharma. They accept accepted that as their dharma. So it's okay for them based on their, because you said it's man-made. Now you're saying God is not responsible for any of this, because all of this, the rules which they subjectively said is their dharma, right to shoot anyone they want because they think that's the right thing they're doing. So I don't understand. Does God not play any role in this?
No, God does not play any role in it. So, ahimsa paramo dharma. Non-violence is the highest form of dharma.
Yeah.
Okay.
But now if somebody is coming to attack you, your family, your wife, your children, what are you going to do? Oh, ahimsa.
No, you defend yourself.
It depends. No, it depends.
You're going to defend. So that defense is your dharma. That is the right thing to do at that time.
Yeah.
But God does not come to us and say, you should do this, you should do that, because every situation is unique in and of itself. And it is up to the individual to decide how they will apply the principles of dharma in that situation.
That is what I'm saying. That is subjective. So your moral, what you just said about defense, okay? For example, there are many people out there who are terrorists and they say we are defending our country. So in Israel, for example, the Palestinians would be the terrorists. For the Palestinians, they are the heroes. And vice versa for the Israelis. You see what I mean? Now, at the end of the day, if everybody is going to have this subjective views of what is good and right, then you'll have chaos in the world. Then the meaning of, of justice doesn't even prevail, because everybody somehow is correct by their own understanding. And the only way you can counter that is like we believe in Islam. We say, Amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. Yes, so which we basically say you must preach what is good, or you must do what is good and prevent what is evil. And that is the principle. But when Allah has told us what is good and what is evil, Allah has told us what is halal and what is haram. So it's a directive already from Allah. But you're saying in Hinduism is all man-made. The rules are man-made. What is good is man-made.
I would say even in Islam. So, for example, your whole concept of haram and halal is arbitrary.
Why? Why is it arbitrary? Allah tells us what's halal and haram in the Qur'an. How is it arbitrary?
So why would God say that alcohol is haram?
No, hold on. You said arbitrary means people just make up. When you say it's in the Qur'an, that means it's a directive from the Creator, from Allah.
Yeah.
It's not arbitrary. So it's a false, false analogy to use in this case.
No. Look. So
that is a faith claim.
No, it's not.
Differentiate.
Well, you said it's in the Quran. I told you it's in the Quran. When you say it's in the Quran, then we know halal and haram is in the Quran. Whether you agree or disagree with the Quran, whether it's come from Allah, that's a different topic altogether. Yeah. But right now, it's not arbitrary for the Muslims.
Yeah.
Oh no, absolutely. We can say the same. Like, for example, you say fitra, everybody is born a Muslim, but we can say everybody is born a Hindu. And
we don't say born a Muslim.
We say born with the fitra. There's a difference.
Born with the fitra to recognize God. That's what we say. We don't say born a Muslim, because Muslim comes later, but born with a need to worship and a need to recognize that there is a creator. This is what the need is.
We don't agree with that.
Okay.
But this is
Brother Abdul Rahman to just finish his point. I think he's making an interesting point. So
points to clarify.
So it was just on libertarian free will. I think so. We either have free will or we don't. Really, we can get into what libertarian free will, but basically, libertarian free will is the idea that we could have done otherwise in certain choices. As in, to summarize it, like just put it very simply. The causal history that leads to a certain act doesn't necessitate the act. It is compatible with there being an alternative. That's simply what libertarian free will is. So I was wondering if, on your view, that kind of libertarian free will exists. I mean, it's clear that God doesn't have it on your view, because you said he doesn't have any choice in the existence of the created world or the contingent world. But how about like these illusions of God? Do we, as illusions of God, have libertarian free will? That's the question I was asking.
Well, when it comes to free will, it's a lot more subtle. First of all, there is no free will. There's only a will. It's an illusion of freedom, because when you analyze from the moment you wake up till the moment you go to sleep at night, how much of that is a free choice? You can only choose between alternatives that are in front of you. You cannot choose freely to be naked in England in the middle of winter. That's not a free choice. You're conditioned. Every single choice we make is conditioned by multiple factors. And neuroscience has proven that the brain fires before we actually think the thought.
Yeah, but I mean, the free will debate is very big. I mean, that neuroscience, those experiments don't like conclusively demonstrate anything. There's a lot of philosophical baggage that comes with it, with regard to determinism versus free will. We can get into that debate, but I mean, for my view, I hold to a libertarian free will view, or at least a compatibilist view. And you're denying that. You're saying that it's an illusion. Now, I'm wondering, on that view, how is it the case that we can really, how does this idea of consequence and karma make any sense in terms of, you're saying the pragmatic application, but then how is that the case when we have been set down this road that's going to occur the way it occurs, without any intervention from ourselves or any freedom to choose our actions? Not just that, it's kind of like that the self doesn't even exist. But putting that aside, if it is an illusion, how does this concept of karma, like, how is accountability? How does accountability make any sense? It's just like a pack of dominoes, just doing, like, within a domino effect, one hitting the other, one effect leading to another effect, and
it's essentially a hard determinism perspective, right? It's essentially hard determinism.
Now, gentlemen, these are fascinating discussions, but do they really interest the public that are watching this show?
Our audience does.
They do, actually.
These are hugely complex issues that we have to go into. The nature of free will is not something you can discuss.
Maybe we can have a separate program on free will then, in that case. Maybe we can have a follow-up at some point.
The summary of free will from a Hindu perspective is the goat that is tied to a post. You have free will to move. The goat can walk around and move and eat within that limits of the rope and the post. And so we're all born with inherent disabilities, and we can only function within those disabilities. But now the question in philosophy or religion, shall we say, is, do we have the free choice to choose to believe in God or not? Can I freely choose Islam over Christianity or Judaism or Hinduism or atheism? Now, you would answer, yes, we do have that free will. I would deny it. And I would say, well, I can only think according to my rational proclivities that I have. And when I read the Qur'an, for example, I am not impressed. And I do not find that there is a lot of rationality in it. So at one stage, you have Allah says that he determines everything. This is I said the argument in Islam is between Qadr and Jabr. Is there really free will? Even this matter is discussed in Islam, and there are different views on it. If Allah is the creator and he determines everything and everything is according to his will, then what will do we have? And it says,
so we believe but you're mistaken with what you're saying. So I think
so it says that Allah guides who he wishes, and he puts a heart on those whom he doesn't wish to guide. So you have a lot of contradiction within the Quran itself about how much free will we have. And so
you're quite mistaken there.
Are you familiar, Mr. Rami, with a view called
help me to understand? If Allah is the creator,
let's have a topic on that. Let's have a separate topic on that. And
it sounds like you
it's four of you, one of me.
Hold on. So
just a small point before we move on is just that.
So the point is that even within the Quran itself, I can bring all the verses. I've got them.
Yeah.
But
Mr. Rami, respectfully,
everything. And you yourself, you say Inshallah, Mashallah.
Yes,
what is Inshallah, Mashallah? It is the will of God that is operating, not my will.
So just a small meta point here, just to realize, if I want to bring your position to a contradiction, you realize how I'm asking a lot of questions, trying to understand them and trying to explore your view before I can say, hey, there seems to be a contradiction. How do you resolve this? So of course, we can go into any book and say, hey, there seems to be an apparent contradiction here. But if we're going to approach it respectfully, we're going to acknowledge the nuance that's there, right? And if I could ask you a simple question, for example, one of the views that is put forward within the philosophy of religion about this question is Molinism. Are you familiar with Molinism?
I've heard of it. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, so it's very simple, and it tries to make sense of this view of God's predetermining things versus free will, and it basically speaks within the context of possible world semantics, and that God has knowledge of possible worlds and the actions of free agents in possible worlds, and he actualizes those worlds. Now, there are problems with these views, but it's certainly not the case that we just simply have a superficial conflict between texts and then simply shout out contradiction. No, we're much more nuanced in the way we approach texts and worldviews and positions. We ask questions, we try to deconstruct it before shouting out contradictions, which is what we're doing here, which is why I'm asking you questions which really, to be honest, haven't been answered before I say, okay, this seems to be a contradiction. I think that's the better approach. But so apart from that, I mean, if we just take the views like in isolation on their own, if we take the views on their own without getting into the metaphysics of it and say, okay, here there's free will, here there's no free will, what problems does the free will world you have and what problems does the no free will world you have, then my question still applies, which is, if this concept of consequence and karma is to make sense, and if it is to account for this idea of moral accountability and consequence, then how does it when the chain of causation that any individual goes through in their life is a mere idea of, toppling down of dominoes. It's a domino effect that the individual has no role in. Not just that, the individual isn't really the individual. The individual at the end of the day doesn't really exist. So I'm just wondering how this idea solves the problem of you're saying evil. I don't think it does. I think it just says everything is deterministic. And if that's one of the ways you can solve it, then the theist can just say everything is deterministic and, God deterministically created the world. Not a solution. It just sweeps the question under the carpet and pretends to answer it.
Yeah, well, I think this is the problem that you Muslims have. This is your problem, not ours.
How? The free will question that I asked you?
Because it says, God said, I created men and jinn to worship me. Then he also says, I created men and jinn for hell. So it means this, again, it's your problem between Qadar and Jabr. Does God determine everything? And if God is omniscient and he knows what we are going to do before we do it, how do we have free will? Do we have an option to do other than what God knows?
So are you saying that the knowledge of God's knowing of a future act means that there's no free will?
Correct. Because here, okay, now the problem is that there's a bit of asymmetry going on here, because the very learned and knowledgeable Abdul Rahman is questioning me without giving alternative options. The best way we can understand and explore religion is to do contrast and comparison. So I present a view and then you present an alternative view, and we can discuss which of those is most rational. But simply,
but that's what I'm doing right now, Mr. Rami. But I'm not honestly. If you're not interested in having the discussion, then I'm not interested either, to be honest. So this, I'm just asking you questions.
The point is that just to keep on asking questions without going in, I keep on giving you answers, but
Mr. Rami,
like those answers.
I won't ask you questions. Go ahead, ask me questions. You want to ask me questions? Ask me questions.
We're already 2 hours into this.
Yeah, but the title of the stream is Demystifying Hinduism. How does it make sense?
I'm trying to demystify Hinduism, but there are things that you cannot it's like explaining entire system of philosophy in 1 hour. It is impossible.
No, fair enough. I think what we can do is
statement.
How long have you been studying philosophy?
No disrespect, but if the discussion is like this...
How many years have you been studying philosophy?
A long time.
Right, exactly. So you want to summarize this in one hour?
I want to discuss it. We can discuss certain
topics.
Inshallah, Abdul Rahman, we can have another session. And if Pandit Rami is willing, we could have another session on free will, because I think there are many assumptions you made about the Qur'an, which we can easily explain to you why those are not contradictions, which appear to be contradictions to you.
The best way to enter into understanding is through conversation.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's not
And
interrogation.
that is the purpose of this program.
It's not going
Panditji.
through an inquisition. You actually need to give me something. So you need to say, okay, we disagree with your point on free will. We believe there's an absolute free will. Or we don't.
So you want me to ask you about questions that I don't find controversial, stuff that I don't find problematic. I mean,
I don't mind discussing, but we cannot keep on going around in the same circles, asking the same questions, expecting a different answer.
These are the fundamental questions, Mr. Rami, that
people
ask.
Abdul Rahman, you've asked the same question at least 10 times.
Actually, with due respect, Panditji, it's not the same question being asked. It's trying to understand a particular question, and I think Abdul Rahman has been quite specific on that. Anyway, I think if you're not ready right now to discuss this, we can bring to do a comparative type discussions in another session, maybe in the future. So because we wanted to talk about karma and dharma, I think, Abdul Rahman, if you don't mind, let's just move on to just finish understanding at least part of it within the Hindu tradition, what exactly that is. So I have a question, Pandit Ji, on this very issue in terms of the Papa and Punya.
Mansur, I think let this be the last question before we open for the Q&A, because just to be fair to Pandit Ji, he's been here for quite a while now. So let this be the last question.
The last question.
Open for
So this is on issues of, when we talk about dharma and karma, on issues of Papa and Punya, on your sin and virtue or righteous acts. Philosophically, there cannot be any sin greater than sin against God. But my understanding is in Hinduism, it doesn't matter if you sin against God. It doesn't matter if you deny God, if you reject God, if you do all this sarcasm against God, or even all the silly things people do. Those people who don't believe in God. But for example, if you were to sin against your parents, for example, that's not forgivable. Is that correct?
Correct. Because God, for us, again, this is our perspective, is that God does not have ego. So there is nothing that you can do to offend God. And God knows and because God is omniscient, he knows our past, present, and future. And so there is nothing that we could do to offend against God. And so God we remove from the equation of Papa and Punya. So the greatest sins are those which we do to other human beings. And particularly, the greatest sin in Hinduism is ingratitude. Mm-hmm. For ingratitude, there is no expiation. And so our entire lives, the value of our lives, we need to express gratitude to our parents for raising us, gratitude to our teachers for teaching us, gratitude to our friends for supporting us, gratitude to the environment for supplying us. So it's all about gratitude and ingratitude. So the greatest sin for us is ingratitude.
Sure.
And part of that includes God, obviously, because if God is the manifestation behind everything, and God is everywhere, by showing gratitude to others, we're showing gratitude to God. By showing ingratitude to others, we're expressing ingratitude to the divine. So for us, the greatest sin is not disbelief like it is in Islam. It's a thought crime. For us, it's action-based. Karma is all about action, not about your thoughts.
Sure. Can any of these sins that human beings can do, can it lead to them to go into digression? Digress mode of going into the cycle of karma and become like, a rat or a cockroach or anything like that, like as Manu Smriti teaches? Or do you think this is a myth?
No, that's all mythology. The metaphysics is that we always move forward, but we are born again into terrible circumstances through your karma. I mean, when you look around you in the world today and look at the suffering, like Yemen is the greatest crisis in the world today, which Muslim babies are starving to death. And right next door, Saudi Arabia, one of the richest countries in the world that's causing this. You look at Afghanistan, what the people are going through. You look in Africa, the droughts, the tsunami. You see incredible suffering in the world today. So we would say that all that suffering collectively is because of karma. So it's not that you go to a hell. We don't believe in a hell.
No, actually, my question wasn't about with due respect, my question was not about Narak there or hell. Just when we find the Manu Samhita is a shastra, it's a law, it's a codified book of law.
Yes,
which was
Manu
once-
Samhita is not a shastra. It's a shastra means a teaching.
Mhm.
That's all. Shastra just means a teaching. Manu Samhita is not our core text. Our core text is Bhagavad Gita. That is what Bhagavad Gita for us is the equivalent of the Qur'an for you. So Manu Samhita is just some law, some old guy 2,500 years ago, he came up with these laws. The Manu Samhita is completely plagiarized as well. It's there's a lot of interpolation, and Indian literature is notorious for interpolation. So we don't take these books seriously. And also Manu himself said at the end of the text, he said, if you find that my laws are, if the public find my laws to be disagreeable, they can forget them. They can jettison them. Because these are applied in, these are laws which were made for 2,500 years ago. They're inapplicable today, most
Well,
of them.
fundamentally, you said they were man-made laws anyway. So,
Okay.
I mean, so there is
All
no
laws are
divine,
man-made.
there's no divine description there anyway, right?
We don't believe in divine laws.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
All right,
Last
we're going to
question.
open for the
Okay.
Q&A now, inshallah.
Yes.
Yep,
So
we've got some.
just going to put the link in the
People
in the description, and also in the I'm going to pin it.
Okay.
So
I've got,
it's already there in
So
the
just for the
over.
audience, how long do you think we'll take Q&A, brothers? Just to make sure we have a cut-off time for everybody.
Yeah, let's say about maybe another half an hour.
Is that okay with you,
Panditji?
Panditji?
Maximum.
Okay, maximum half an hour. Okay, wonderful. We'll do a maximum half an hour.
2:30.
Great.
Fine. Okay, we've got our first guest already. Let's bring him in.
Yeah,
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Kaleem.
Where are you calling
I'm
from, brother?
Where are
And what's your question to our Pandit Rami?
Okay, my name is Kaleem. I'm from Malaysia, but originally an Indian. Born and brought up in India. In fact, my childhood, I grew up watching Mahabharata and Ramayana, which is, mashallah, aired on the national channel. So I had some questions for Panditji, but I would prioritize my most important question to Pandit Rami. Pandit Rami, with the little knowledge I have about the Hindu scriptures, and I had watched your previous live stream, you mentioned that the Vedas and the Upanishads are the most superior scriptures, and the Puranas, which includes the Mahabharata and the
Ramayana.
the Ramayana, these are not to be considered to be superior than the Vedas and the Upanishads. Hope I'm correct in that.
Okay, just a clarification there. The statement is Veda Upanishad, Itihasa Purana Abhyam Veda Upabrahmya. So the function of the Puranas and the Itihasas is to elaborate on core teachings of the Vedas. So if the Purana agrees with the Veda, we accept it. If it does not agree with the Veda, i.e. Upanishads, we reject it.
Okay, so let me put forward the question then. The question that which I wanted to ask was, basically in the Puranas, which is also a Mahabharata, we know Bhagavad Gita is a part of Mahabharata. It is a part of Bhishma Parv. So, but I have heard you giving so many references from the Bhagavad Gita, and you, in fact, insisting that the Bhagavad Gita is the main text for the Hindus, but it is actually a part of the Puranas. It's not a part of the Vedas and the Upanishads. So that's one thing that which you can clarify. The second thing is that we know that in the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 2, verse number 30 to 38, there is a clear mention by Shri Krishna to Arjuna that there is a concept of heaven. There is a concept of hell. And there is also the same concept of accountability of heaven and hell in the Vedas.
No.
So basically,
No.
yes, if you want, then I can quote you the references
from
from
the
the Vedas. I can quote you the references, Panditji. If you want to, you can correct me if the references are wrong.
Okay, I'll come back to this. So first
So
of all,
okay, so my question is, my question is, let me rephrase the question. The question is that there is mention of heaven and hell and accountability of a person for the deeds that which he does in the Vedas. And there is also this mention, even though it is in the Puranas, even though it is in the lower scriptures, even Shri Krishna mentions to Arjuna on the battlefield that if you fight for dharma, if you fight for the moral right, then you will go into the Swaragam. The word used is Swaraga, the heavenly planets, or whatever you translate. So how do you conciliate it with the concept of karma and recycle and rebirth and rebirth and rebirth to the scriptures, what the scriptures have to say, both the Vedas as well as the Bhagavad Gita? Thank you very much.
Clarification coming up now. As I said, Puranas and Itihasas have to complement the teaching of the Upanishads. Now, the Gita is said to be the cream of the Upanishads because whatever is in the Gita, and most of it agrees with the Upanishads. So we don't have a problem with that. You can go straight back to the Upanishads, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, and you can get your information from there. The Gita is the same information presented in a more palatable way. That is one. So that's why we accept. So all the Vedanta Acharyas accept the Gita and Upanishads as the basis for modern Vedanta, what we call Vedanta, Hindu metaphysics. Now the second one, heaven and hell. Heaven and hell are not mentioned in the Samhita portion of the Rig Veda. There may be I've not come across it even in the Upanishads. But from a metaphysical point of view, heaven and hell are two things. First of all, they are metaphorical states, not real states of being. Secondly, they are temporary. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says you will enjoy heaven for a certain period of time, which is commensurate with your merit. Then what happens? You are born again on earth. So from a Hindu metaphysical point of view, whatever has a beginning must have an end. You cannot have an eternal end from a temporary beginning. And those deeds which lead you to heaven are limited. They have a limited coinage or, a value. And same with Naraka. You will go to Naraka for a certain period of time to fast track your karma, and then you're born again on earth. So earth is where it's all happening. This is where the evolution happens. Now, again, from a higher philosophical, metaphysical point of view, heaven and hell are just incentive devices to get people to do the right thing. So you frighten children. You say, oh, if you don't do this, the bogeyman will get you. Or if you do this, I'll give you a sweet. So these are just inducements for common people. But from a philosophical point of view, we reject all notion of eternal heaven and hell. The only eternal state is moksha, union with God. Everything else is temporary. This is our position. So even those references to heaven and hell, and I can give you at least 10 different verses, which will tell you that heaven and hell are states of the mind only. They have got no objective reality. So remember that the Hindu library is vast. So what you have in Garuda Purana gives you, a lot of the Puranas will give you intense detail about what happens in hell. But these are all metaphors. They are not, we do not accept them as real states of being. And in Islam, the only reason that you go to hell is disbelief. In Hinduism, there is no thought crime for access to heaven or hell. It is all based on karma.
Okay, thank you for at least agreeing, Panditji, that there is heaven and hell, whether it is for a long period of time or for a short period of time. There is some accountability. But as you are conveniently saying,
karma is your accountability.
Whatever the karma you did, you are accountable for it, and you will be punished or rewarded for it.
Not punished or rewarded. There's no punishment or reward. There is,
but there is naraka, right?
Naraka is consequence, but it is a mythological. You're not getting the point here, Bhaiya, that it is a mythology. There is no Naraka. Naraka is in your head. There is no place where there's fire and torture and carry on, because it is incompatible with the concept of God as perfectly compassionate and merciful. It is impossible to have a hell, a place of eternal suffering, and at the same time posit that there is a God who is perfectly good and omnibenevolent and compassionate. These two cannot work together. Either
So
God
basic-
is imperfect or God is perfect.
So basically, you say that it is all metaphorical. It is just a state of mind, which we don't find it in the scriptures. Maybe it is your interpretation. But
No,
what
it's
I can
not
understand,
my interpretation, Vaya. I can show you. You are only limited. I am the Shastri here. I can give you all the quotes you like, all the sages, Vishwamitra, and even
I
Rama.
studied in a Shastri school in my childhood.
You may have studied there, but there are different views. And I'm talking from the metaphysical point of view, not for, I reject the Puranas. I personally reject Purana.
Which means even Bhagavad Gita should be rejected because it is a part of the Purana?
Again, Kaleem, Mahmood, Sayed, you're not listening to the Pandit. I said what agrees with the Veda, we accept. If it disagrees with the Vedas, we reject it. It is like Dhaif, a hadith in Islam. Even, are you a Sunni? Are you a Sunni?
I'm a Muslim.
Or Shia?
I'm a Muslim.
Do you accept the Shia's hadith? The Shia hadith said
if it fulfills the conditions of hadith, we accept it.
No, you do not. I know.
No, if it fulfills the conditions of a Sahih hadith, we accept it.
And the Shia do not accept Sunni hadith. And even the hadith themselves, you have Da'if hadith that nobody accepts. So just like that, you grant us the same courtesy that in Hinduism, we have Puranas that some people accept. And we have Vedanta. And the majority of Hindus are following Advaita Vedanta, in which we reject completely the idea of Naraka and Swarga, because these are material states of existence for the fulfillment of desires. As long as there is desire, there is suffering.
Okay, so good to know.
Desire, there is suffering.
Okay, thank you, Panditji. I think with
Brother Kaleem, thank you.
Don't mind, brother Kaleem, because we need to finish within half an hour.
Jazakallah khair, and thank you very much, Pandit Rami.
You coming along. When we have Panditji coming again in another stream, inshallah, you're more than welcome, brother, to come and ask him
thank you very much.
Other questions. Okay.
Inshallah, thanks.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Before we get next guest in, I think if Brother Abdul Rahman wants to quickly just make a point here, Panditji said
Abdul Rahman's got many points to make.
No, very quickly, even 30 seconds or 1 minute. Panditji mentioned about how the concept of eternal heaven or hell, or rather goes against God's being perfect.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you want to just quickly come to this point? Because of course we would disagree with the Pandit here.
So you can disagree in two ways. I mean, you could do it like internally within his worldview, like how that makes sense, because at the end of the day, everything is God. So I mean, it would be just him putting himself through a state of suffering, which so he would be cruel to his own self, which I don't understand how it's not merciful. And the other point about suffering being incompatible, as in it being like inconsistent with the idea of an all loving, all merciful God. I mean, I can combine that with another point I wanted to make, is that there seems to be this reaction to certain questions that we're oversimplifying it. The time isn't enough to address it. But when the critique goes the other way, it's incompatible and just take my word for it. I mean, the literature out there on the problem of evil is so extensive that I don't understand how we can just say, that's it. There's no way around it. The logical problem of evil, which is the one you seem to be alluding to, which is that it's incompatible with the idea, is one that's, rejected by a lot of atheist philosophers today, and is not as common and acceptable as it used to be.
Hang on, Abdul Rahman. Answer me one question. Answer me one question. Do you believe that there is an eternal place of torture, sadistic, psychopathical torture for people who do not believe in Islam?
No.
Answer me that.
No, I said no. Sadistic, psychopathical? No. So the way you phrase that question, no, I don't answer it.
As described in the Quran.
As described in the Quran, yes. Yes,
as described in the Quran. They will be given a skin, and the skin will be burnt, and every time the skin is old, you believe that?
Yes.
Auzu billah.
Yeah, a'udhu billah. So now can you bring that to coherence, some
sorry,
kind of
that
issue? So this is an appeal to emotions, right? So you don't like that.
No.
But the issue
It
here
is
is
appeal to logic. How
Logic.
can you agree that God is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the most compassionate, but yet if I do not believe in him, in Allah, I believe in Brahman, which is maybe something different, that Allah will now torture me for all eternity because I did not accept him. And the torture has got no purpose. It is just sadistic.
Okay,
it is
no,
not,
that last part. That last part.
Now,
Let's
hang
not
on.
that last part.
Hang on. Let me talk. You are very prolific. Now,
But
your
you're
son,
asking me a question, so I have
if
to
your
answer.
son offends you, how long will you torture your son for?
Okay, can I now answer your question?
Just simply, don't give me big metaphysics about Brahman and this and cosmos.
So now you want simplistic answers.
No, we're talking about simplistic things. Hello, Are? You see, we go from the localized to the cosmic.
Let's give
You
Brother
can't
Abdul
keep
Rahman a
jumping
chance
between the
to
local and the
respond,
cosmic.
Pandit.
You have to discuss here. I'm asking you a simple question.
So
I
the
ask
concept
you.
of
Let's give Brother Abdul Rahman a chance to respond.
So the problem of evil and everything it comes with in terms of meta ethics, normative ethics, the idea of suffering, the different theodicies put out there, and how it's been discussed, and how the logical problem of evil has been largely rejected by philosophers, because you appeal to philosophy and you say, that Hinduism has a huge philosophical side to it. Even atheistic philosophers have largely, even though some of them still accept it, but they have largely right now rejected the logical problem of evil that you're putting forward. You're saying the all merciful punishing me for an eternity for rejecting him is logically incoherent. That's not something that is mostly accepted by philosophers these days, and that is because
that's not true, Abdul Rahman.
If you allow Pandit Abdul Rahman to finish his point, if you don't mind, please.
You're asking a question. You're asking. No, it is true. What do you mean? So
which philosophers accept that there's eternal punishment? Even Christians and Jews do
You're
not
not understanding me, Mr. Rami. If you just listen to me, you'll understand me. I'm not saying philosophers accept eternal punishment. I'm saying that philosophers, even those who are atheists these days, the vast majority of them working in the area don't accept the logical formulation of the problem of evil. There are those who do, but most of them don't. Many of them appeal to what is called an evidential problem of evil, right? What you're describing about God's mercy being absolutely incompatible with the idea of him, of evil, or of him torturing a disbeliever for an eternity, is not something that is just accepted and granted as you make it seem. You have to look at what all merciful means, the new theological nuances, what it's applied to, and what it means for God to punish disbelievers. There's a nuance to it. You want nuance to be applied to your position, and you don't want even the questions to be asked. But when it's our turn to answer, you want the question to do the answering in a very simplistic way. No, that's not very consistent. So the point here is that no, the logical problem is not there. When I say God is all merciful, that doesn't mean that God's mercy applies to everything. Because you can make a statement that is contradictory without exception.
Yeah, sorry.
Let me explain.
You are giving a soliloquy now. You are going over. You are over exaggerating the issue that we're discussing. We need to keep it to simple points.
Okay. God's mercy does not apply. God's mercy does not apply to disbelievers in the hereafter. That's explicitly stated. How is that contradictory? That's the conception of mercy. You might find it emotionally unsettling for you, but if you want to say it's incoherent, then you need to bring forward a case of A and not A. Contradiction. There's no contradiction here.
The thing is, here you are going on to pure philosophy and you're discussing a jumble of words. This is a word salad. You're going into word salad.
Okay.
I am talking about simple things.
So you want me to speak to you simplistically, as in you don't understand what I'm saying, or does it really not make sense?
No, but you are over exaggerating something that we are trying to discuss in simple terms.
So you want me to simplify my language because you don't understand it?
I want you to explain, as an Islamic philosopher, And based on the fact that the Qur'an is the word of God, the final word of God, he says in the Qur'an that all those who disbelieve in him, he will torture for all eternity. But at the same time, you say he is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Now, I am a simple mushrik. I do not understand how a God of love can torture somebody for disbelief. And according to Islam, as I know it, the worst sin is shirk. Shirk is the worst sin. It's worse than murder, rape, pillage. And it is a thought crime. So I want you to explain to me how this.
Let me come in here very quickly. So just sort of let's just bring the heat down a little bit. I just have to take a deep breath very quickly, momentarily. So you've said a lot. Unfortunately, what's happened is you've mixed different theologies into the same discussion. This idea of God is love is a Christian concept. This does not exist in Islam. Okay, so let's be. So if we're going to talk about our theology, please use the words that we use in our theology. I mean, we're trying to be very respectful in return.
That's why I said Rahman. I repeated
exactly. So Rahman does not mean Allah. God is love. This is not the correct translation, nor is it the correct usage. It is incorrect. Allah's mercy is one of more than 99 attributes that are all balanced when Allah takes a decision on a matter. This is what we believe. So his justice, his mercy, his wrath, his creative power, all amongst 99 other attributes are all balanced when decisions are taken. So to simplify this and say, because of one attribute, XYZ happens, is an incoherent statement from our theological perspective. So this is exactly what Abdul Rahman is trying to say, is if you try and oversimplify it with Christian understandings of theodicy, of Christian understanding of divine simplicity, which is what they believe in, we do not, then you're actually talking the wrong theology. It's not Islam, it's something else. And if you're mixing them up, then you've invented a theology that we do not believe in.
Okay, can I just respond to that? Yes, I agree with you.
If you don't mind,
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, sure.
I agree with you. From our perspective, we agree with the Christians. God is Priya. God is love. We agree that totally. And from our theological perspective, God is Amalam, which means he does not have any negative quality. So wrath, anger, hatred, all of these qualities are humanistic qualities that are inappropriate to the nature of God. So God is just purely love.
When I look at Kali and I look at the way she holds all those weapons, that doesn't show me love, Panditji.
Okay, Kali.
Yeah.
What does Kali mean? This is a whole different discussion.
Exactly.
Kali means time. Time. She is the personification of time. Time is what gives you birth. Kali gives birth. Time nurtures you. Kali nurtures you. Time kills you. Time. This is what Kali destroys. What Kali is destroying, the head that she is holding decapitated, that is the ego. What separates us from God is ego. So we need to remove that ego before we can achieve God. Our ego is what holds us back. And so the whole image of Kali, I can give you a lecture on that.
And I can tell you during time there are many things that happen, like the tsunamis and the earthquakes and all these things that happen in time. Are you saying God has no control over any of this natural phenomenon?
God
kills
does
many
not.
people, and this could be the consequences of maybe their sins, for example.
That we're coming back onto karma again. The point is that
exactly.
God does not micromanage.
Either you say God has no play in this, or God does have a play in this.
God does not micromanage the climate. This is not this is a Abrahamic concept.
So who causes these natural calamities?
This is natural calamities.
Yeah. Who causes
tsunamis are caused? We know what they're caused by. We know what causes droughts. We know what causes storms. This is scientific. We don't have to posit some mysterious sky guy moving clouds around.
But then you say that this is the karma of these people who died in these natural calamities.
We've done that. We've already spoken about that. I
That's
said
right.
there's collective karma and individual karma. So we
We've
will
got another
discuss
guest now,
that.
Panditji. We have
Mubin ur Rahman wishes to ask a question.
Assalamu alaikum. Please state where you're from and ask your question. What question?
Please
is it?
ask what only, please, Brother Mubin Rahman.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam.
Assalamu
I have a very simple question to Panditji. So he
I hope
just said
so.
what differentiates us from God is ego and all other negative attributes that he stated.
Yeah.
So he also said that everything that's in existence is God. So where does these bad attributes come from?
Again, this is from what we call as avidya, ignorance and attachment. So the problem in Hindu metaphysics, our personal existential problem is suffering. We experience dukkha. All of us have dukkha. Now, what is the cause of that dukkha? Is the identification with the mind and the body. So the moment that you decrease that identification,
I wasn't actually
let me
talking about
finish.
dukkha.
Brother,
I was saying
if you let
ego.
Panditji finish,
Please
let
let
me
I'm only
Panditji.
going
finish.
to allow one question now because of the time constraint. If
So the problem is that we are identified with our mind and body. As long as we're identified with our mind body, we experience dukkha. The goal of life, and all living beings are seeking sukha and trying to avoid dukkha. So the way to avoid dukkha, achieve sukha here and now, is to diminish our attachment, grasping, clinging to the body and mind, and to understand our true nature as Atman. Once we reach that Atman, then it goes.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
brother.
There's one
That's fine.
final question. I'm sorry. So,
brother,
so
if you
there
don't
was-
mind,
Brother,
want
we're
to
really
finish
sorry. We have a
stream
long
shortly,
queue of people,
so
and we'd like to respect the others coming on.
if you don't mind, brother, okay,
Jazakallah.
just one question.
Yeah,
is
also
enough,
respect
okay?
the time of Panditji. I think he's very
You can email us the question, and
Yeah.
we'll forward it on to Panditji, and we can maybe
Inshallah.
answer
Yes,
it.
Okay, brother.
that's a
Assalamu
good
alaikum.
idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jazakallah, thank you.
Who do we have next? Bawa. Can you
We
hear
can't
us?
hear you. You're muted, brother.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa
Walaikum
alaikum
salam.
salam.
Please state where you're joining from and your question
Hi,
very
Rami.
briefly.
I have a
Hi.
question for you, please.
Please ask.
Yeah, you just mentioned earlier that it's you who leaves your body whenever your body is not able to continue in this life or in this world.
Yeah.
So can we, according what you said, for example, if people are aging, they are really old, or they are like missing parts of their body, or they have cancer, so are they allowed to commit suicide to look for another body to continue living?
Yes, that's a good question. Thank you for that. Euthanasia has always been part of Hindu teaching, but euthanasia, it depends again on intention. If you find that your body is unserviceable, then you may certainly leave this body, and the recommended way of doing it is by fasting. So you inform.
Yeah, sorry.
So you basically commit suicide through fasting.
Only through fasting.
That is the recommended way.
By
not
who?
through violence, not through
By
jumping off a cliff or hanging
yeah,
yourself.
but how is it recommended? Where can we read this?
It is recommended in many of the different shastras. I can send you the quotes if you want. You can notice that.
Can you quote one right now, for example? In which book is it?
You can find it in the Garuda Purana. There is a statement there. I've got all the quotes. I can send
That's
it
fine.
to you.
We can get all these quotes later if you're interested.
We don't need
brother.
them right now.
Okay.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
That's fine.
All
That's
right.
fine,
Thank
brother.
you for
Thank you.
joining us.
Okay, brother.
But it's
Thank
all,
you, brothers.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Who do we have next?
Edgar Allen. Yeah, bring
Bro.
your brother Edgar. Hello.
Hello, guys. Assalamu alaikum to the four panelists, and hello
Wa alaikum
to
salam.
Brother Rami. So I've been following this discussion for about an hour, and I think a key thing that results in us kind of talking past each other is related to epistemology. Because, for example, like someone may be a child, right? And their mom on their birthday may say, you can't have that extra piece of cake. and they may not comprehend it emotionally. They can't logically
But
refute
Brother
it.
Edgar, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do you have a question, please? Please state your question briefly. We don't have much time.
Yeah, so I was just saying, like, in terms of if you want to make these emotional arguments, you might not be able to understand it, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't hold true, right? Like, I wouldn't try to refute Hinduism because, oh, like, a child who gets raped is just consequence. Like, that sounds pretty emotionally hurtful. So I think, like, and just to kind of add on to like what Abdul Rahman is saying, why don't we in these discussions focus more on what leads to like a logical conclusion? Like, if you agree premise, and it leads to a logical conclusion, then it should be accepted. Whereas if it leads to an impossibility, such as in the idea of God, it should be rejected. For example, the contingency argument would only lead to the Islamic and Judaic understanding of God and necessarily eliminate everything else. And all we have to postulate is that there is existence. So if you accept that and you accept all the premises leading up to something, then you should accept what follows. And if there was a logical impossibility in Islam, I would reject Islam as well. But there's only emotional difficulty, like there is with all religions. So I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Who is the question to?
To Panditji.
Yeah.
Panditji, okay, yeah.
That is what we call Turek trotting. There's a lot of postulations that are put in there that I can't address at the moment because I don't have a definite question. Do you have a simple question?
Yeah, my simple question is basically like if something leads to, like, for example, how would you bring someone else to Hinduism versus Islam? So intuitively, we know Islam's the fastest growing religion in the world. What could be the reason for that? I'm saying, why don't you base your beliefs on something that can be foolproof or can be like bulletproof, that there's no kind of premises that you would accept that would lead to a conclusion that would necessarily lead to a conclusion that would directly contradict the worldview you hold. So why not take that into account when formulating a worldview? Because the question is, would you accept Hinduism if you weren't born a Hindu? I would postulate that the answer would be no. If a Muslim presented the contingency argument to me, I would have to accept that the Islamic understanding of God does follow. It doesn't prove a personal or impersonal God, but it does prove that this existence of God is very real. So that would be kind of my suggestion. And then if you disagree,
So
like,
first of all,
agree with that?
First of all, when you come to first of all, Hinduism is not a proselytizing religion. We do not believe in trying to convince anybody else. All our own beliefs are for internal consumption. We do not go around promoting our beliefs to others. So this is the first point. We do not have a universal mandate to make everybody a Hindu, whatever that means. A Hindu is a broad term, which is geographic in nature. It's not specific. But coming back to your other point about contingency argument for God, we do not believe that there are any logical arguments for the existence of God. You can come to a conclusion using the prime mover argument, but even then, it just proves that there is a God, but not that that God is Allah and that he spoke to Muhammad and that he revealed laws. None of that follows from that. All you can say is that there was a prime mover, but nothing. Your logic cannot tell you anything about that.
What it can do is it can eliminate.
Brother, without going into a discussion here.
Not a debate.
Yeah, this become a
Let's
debate
leave
now.
that for another discussion.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for
We
joining.
get your point. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. Who else have we got?
Got Ahmed. Sorry, Mehmet here.
Brother Mehmet.
Please keep it very quickly because I know you've got a load of questions. So, yeah, I was basically going to say
we can't hear you properly.
We can't hear your connection is very poor, brother.
Yeah. What you basically, Hi, sorry. Hi, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Please repeat the question quickly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you have to try again.
Hello?
Yeah, carry on.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I was going to say basically what you believe is valid for Muslims, because you said that you don't believe in hell. You believe that basically hell is on this earth. That's what Alevi Muslims believe in. And to be quite honest with you, it logically it doesn't make sense, because what's a 3-year-old child in Africa? Why logically, like, why is God putting him through hell?
Is that your question?
Yeah, that's my question basically.
Okay.
I know it's a bit of a silly one, but yeah, that's my question.
If you've understood your question, please answer.
I did not understand that question. It was truncated. Can you?
Yeah, sorry. So basically, you said that, like, if you look at Yemen and if you look at all these countries, they're in they're in poverty and there's people dying of hunger and this and that. But that's down to the rest of the world. However far your arm stretches, that's down for the wealthy people. The government help these people out. That's got nothing to do with Islam, so to speak. And I really think that if you had a one-on-one with these brothers, you'd probably maybe could a little bit better, and a lot of views could change, because I think generally, like, I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I think you're misunderstanding.
Okay, brother, I do apologize.
I get the question. Okay, I got it.
There's a connection issues, and we're not getting your question coherently.
Okay, Brother Muhammad, if you got the
I got the question.
Perhaps
let me summarize it.
Please come along and join us. I'm going to let you go, brother, because we're not.
I think I've summarized. I've understood. Let me sort of briefly summarize it. So basically, what he's saying is all of the suffering that you mentioned with respect to Yemen and the various countries that you mentioned, this suffering is being caused by human beings. They're acting with their free will and causing issues, and so the idea that you think that God is somehow forcing this to happen, he says he doesn't sort of believe that to be true, based on the premise that you put forward. And the last thing I think he's basically saying is, look, this idea that if the suffering is somehow man-made, why do you blame God then in that case?
Because God is the creator and God is the manager, according to Islam, not according to us. This is another argument. But if God is the creator and God is the manager of the universe, then obviously he is allowing the suffering to happen. So you have the absolute metaphysical argument, and then you've got the localized argument. That these are wars caused by people for material reasons. But then what is God's role in this? Is he just a spectator, or is he a participant in this, being all powerful and all controlling? So this is another metaphysical problem that we can deal with later.
So I won't respond with a refutation, because I mean, this is a big discussion that we've had in Islamic theology. So, I mean, this is not something that we can resolve in 2 or 3 statements. Sure. Brother Mansur, would you like to respond to anything to that or not?
No, I think,
that's fine.
It's going to take time to...
let's leave it there. Okay, that's fine.
Let's leave it there. To be fair,
Brother Jetem, please ask your question, please.
Hi, assalamu alaikum, everyone. My question is, in Hinduism, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that when a person dies, if they're not cremated, they turn into ghosts. So if that is the case, because majority of the people in the world, when they die, they're not cremated. So if they come back as ghosts, how do they reincarnate?
No, that's not correct understanding. The body to us needs to be disposed of, because it is just a bag of chemicals. So the popular way is cremation, but we also have water burial, where you throw it into the sea and allow the fishes to eat it. There is air burial, which you feed it to the birds. And there is also earth burial, where you can bury the body. So all of these means of corpse disposal are available in Hinduism. What causes you to become a hungry ghost is attachment to your family, to your material circumstances. To die in a state of spiritual delusion leads you, this is the belief, again, this is not something that I'm positing as a fact. I'm saying this is what is believed by most people.
Oh, okay. So, because I've got a few colleagues who are Hindu, and when I asked them this question, they mentioned that if when you die, if you're not cremated, you come back as a ghost. So it kind of made me confused. But at the same time, they do try to make it similar to the concept of jinns in Islam, but in Islam, jinns are not people that have passed away and become spirits or anything like that. Jinns are also a creation at the same time. So do you have anything similar, like concept of jinns in Hinduism, or is it
in Hindu mythology? There's a lot of spiritual creatures. There's asuras, there's demons, gods, anti-gods, there's all this kind of, but that's the Hindu mythology. I don't want to talk about that. There is a belief, but that is, it's some people believe, some people don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I was told by my colleagues
that's fine, brother. If you don't mind,
I'm sure your colleagues told you a lot of things.
Thank you for joining.
No problem.
We'll bring it
Thank
up
you very
time,
much.
Inshallah.
Thank you, brother.
Take care of yourselves. Allah.
I just want to remind everyone, Pandit Ji is fasting, and we really have to respect that. If you guys were in Ramadan and somebody held you for a long time for conversation, you wouldn't like it. So please, guys, try to be brief, to the point, inshallah. And we're going to close the studio now. So the guests who are in the studio, they remain. No more new guests. Jazakallah khair. So right, who is next? This brother here. Okay.
Ahmed Ibrahim.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Mr. Pandit, there is a question for you. I'm from Tamil Nadu. For every Hindus, the code of conduct is been described in the Manu, and in Manu it says like the Vedas should not be heard by the Sudras, and even in the presence of Sudra, Brahmin should not read a Veda, and it's completely make them isolated. Even it's the same with the female persons as well. So what is your stand on the Manu?
Okay, Manu, first of all, is not a universally accepted text. In South India, you're from South India, the book of law is Apastamba, not Manu. South Indians have never accepted Manu. They have only accepted Apastamba. And in Andhra, it is Baudhayana. So there are different law books. There's 18 different law books that are accepted. And most of them are inapplicable today. So we reject all of them. We don't follow those. Now, coming back to Tamil Nadu, Veda, in every single Purapattam, when you have a procession, in front of the deity, there will be Brahmins chanting the Vedas for everyone. And they move around the temple and the Vedas are being chanted. In every bookshop and every record shop in India, you can buy Vedas. They are played on the loudspeakers. So that is a nonsense that Shudra should not hear the Vedas. And the other thing is that 90% of today's Hindus are Sudras. And in Tamil Nadu, the big, if you want to talk about Sudras, the Velalas are the biggest caste. The Velalas are all Sudras, but they run the economy. They are the wealthiest people. The Sudras build the temples. The Sudras maintain the temples. And the Sudras attend the temples. So the entire temple economy is based on the contributions of the Sudras. And the temple managers are Sudras, Velalas, and they employ Brahmins. So this is theoretically, whatever Manu said is bullshit, basically, because the actual practice is something else. And even Ramanuja in the 11th century said that the Vedas have to be chanted in public. So it's
he is one of the known to be a reformer in the Hinduism. But
who's that?
Ramanuja. Yeah. The current president Sankaracharya, he still don't touch the Sudras who are like not Brahmin. He drops the prasad from the upper hand, and he has.
That's his. That's his personal practice, but you can't judge what one person does. The Puri Shankaracharya is a complete idiot. He's homophobic. He's misogynistic. He is completely off the planet. I don't agree with him. So we are free in Hinduism. We are free to believe what we want to believe and follow who we want to follow. So Manu is not a standard, and Manu was never applied by anyone as a system of law. That's another argument. The British actually resurrected Manu because they wanted to use the traditional text. So for the Muslims in India, they resurrected Sharia. And then they said, what are we going to do for the Hindus? So they had some people that advised them, and they said, oh, Manu is the book. So the British pulled this Manu out. But in India, and even today, I don't know a single person who actually reads Manu. There are no lectures on Manu. You will not find any Kalakshepam in South India that they are talking about Manu. And so Manu is a red herring that is brought out by Hinduphobes to say that this is the standard. It's simply not right.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive answer, Panditji. And thank you, Brother Ahmed, for joining. Okay, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Who's next?
Abdul Basit.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Can you make a question very brief, please, if you don't mind?
Yes. Brother Rami talked about God being asleep and the God's not what they call it, affecting the human worlds. So where does the Indian text and the books come from?
Where do the Hindu texts come from? They come from human beings like you and me. We think about things and we write books and we write treatises. That's what we humans do. God doesn't communicate anything to anyone.
Okay,
so God doesn't communicate. How we know all this?
God communicates through your conscience. We believe that God is within your own heart, and through your conscience, God will guide you. No need to take guidance from others.
Brother. I think we'll leave only to those questions.
Panditji actually addressed this last week as well in depth. So this was a question.
Just watch the streams again.
You just watched the last stream.
Thank you for joining. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
Right, we're not taking any more guests, so those who are joining, they will not be allowed. We got Brother Nabil next. Yeah, go on, Nabil.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Yeah, I just have a...
Oops. Sorry, what
happened? Lost him?
Yeah, we lost him.
Brother Nabil.
We just got 2 more people now. Hopefully they'll be very short. Okay, Imre, you want to ask a question quickly?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum, brother.
Alaikum salam.
I have a Mr. Rami, thank you, for all your effort here. I just want to ask, I was born in Sri Lanka, and then I have heard that there is a lot of gods used to be in the northern part of Hindu culture and in that area. So especially Rama, all these gods, right? So I just want to know what happened to them. They used to be physical beings at that. There was a time that they were physical beings, and all what happened to them, and you were saying that the supreme God does not interfere in worldly matter, as another question as well, right? So I'm kind of confused.
Okay, you're confused because, again, as I said before, you're confusing mythology with metaphysics. Philosophy is different to mythology. And mythology is the vehicle of philosophy. And the function of mythology is to teach simple people spirituality and religion. So I personally do not accept that most of the mythology as historical fact. These are metaphysical principles. So I don't believe that God walked on the earth and that he actually did these things, that he had 16,000 wives, and that this is mythology. There's no evidence for it. And primarily in Hinduism, we seek evidence. So for most religious claims, there is no evidence. Even within Judaism, there is no evidence that Abraham existed, no evidence that Moses existed. And so all these prophets and all the dreams, the Noah, the story of Noah, the Tower of Babel, Adam and Eve, all of this is mythology. These are the ways of expressing metaphysical principles, but none of these characters actually lived or walked on the earth. So my view is that all religious stories of every religion are mythology. What matters is what is the metaphysic of that religion.
Okay, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Quick.
Sorry, I'm afraid I can't take any further
time.
question. Okay, Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in.
Right, Brother Nabil is back. Nabil, please make it quick.
Welcome back, Nabil.
Yeah, just a quick question to Pandit Ji. Just wanted to know, in Hinduism there is no beginning and end, and we believe that there was a first human being. We called him Adam, peace be upon him, and there will be when all the people will be wiped out, there will be an end. So how the karma, and even the science proof that this planet will be destroyed. So how the karma and your religion, works out in this case?
First of all, the Earth is not the center of the universe. There are billions and trillions and quadrillions of planets, and so this planet will be wiped out. Our galaxy will one day be engulfed by Andromeda.
All human beings will be wiped out. That's what I meant. Sorry. All
on
human
this
beings.
planet, but we are not the only beings in the world, in the universe. How do we know that there's not life on other planets? So human beings are going to, and we don't accept Adam. We accept Hinduism are quite happy with evolution. We don't find that evolution contradicts any of our philosophy or metaphysics.
Right. Okay.
So Adam is,
thank you, Brother Nabi.
Okay, thank you. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
Last.
Guess who's got?
We got our friend again.
Now,
Namaste,
please,
Namaste.
You have to make your question very brief.
Please,
he knows the drill. Go on, Ahmad.
Yeah, I always get very less time, but still, I'll try. I can only say that Pandit Rami ji is following Ardha Kukuti Nai, half hen, when he says that Puranas are mythology and everything. That
totally mythology.
I can.
Total mythology.
Because when he says mythology, what happens is that then he, the authority like Vyasdev wrote all the Vedas, Upanishads, everything. Then you are questioning the authority of Vyasdev.
Vyasa is not a person. He's a myth.
No. One thing I would say that you are following Ardha Kukutinai half hen. So you want the stories of a farmer who cuts the hen. He just wanted golden eggs, but he didn't want it to feed. But as you know, Shankaracharya says, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Mudamate, Samprapte, Samhite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshate Dukrin Karne. So all your jugglery words will not save. So what happens is now these guys also got confused because how you present the philosophy is so.
What's your question? What is your question?
So the question
Don't
is,
give me a lecture about ISKCON.
Because I think there will be a wrong impression of Hinduism.
No, ask me a question. Don't give me a ISKCONian lecture.
No, so the question is that if you speaking about the authorities of these Puranas as a mythology, whatever you cherry pick, then why do you accept the whole thing then? Why do you accept Hinduism then? Either you accept the whole thing or you reject the whole thing. Simple, because this is half knowledge, half.
Okay. I think Pandit got your question.
Thank you, Brother.
See, you don't have to accept everything to make your case, because there's a lot of rubbish in Hinduism as well. There's a lot of junk.
No rubbish. There is no rubbish.
Brother, please let him answer. Please let him answer.
I'll tell you your Purana. Why is the ocean salty? Because there were some demons hiding in the ocean and Vishnu wanted to kill them. So Agastya Muni drank the ocean, Vishnu killed the demon, and then he pissed the ocean out. So the ocean is Agastya Muni's piss. You believe that?
No, it's all divine. It's all divine. It's all divine. It's real, but you can't, compare your piss. Our piece
hello. According to your Purana, the mountains used to fly. The mountains had wings, and they were causing a traffic congestion in the sky.
Yeah.
So Indra had to chop their wings. You believe that?
So what is the problem that happened long back? So now it doesn't happen. So everything has to organized in this universe. What is the problem in that?
So, yeah.
So now you don't have that problem.
Yeah. That is mythology. That is not fact, right? I am a Vedantin. I'm following Vedanta. I do not follow Puranas. That is all rubbish. That is like Arabian Nights. That is Harry Potter stuff. I am telling you, you have to use your intelligence.
So, Brother Ahmad, very quickly.
Last point I will make.
So, Brother Ahmad, just for the audience, what is your Hindu background? Because Ramiji, Panditji has said he is a Vedanta follower. So, what is your background?
See, my background is we believe in personal God. Like, for example, and this God or truth is multifaceted. Like, for example,
I understand, but what is the name?
On the shore.
What is your sect? What is your sect?
What is your sect?
Yeah, Gaudiya Vaishnava.
Your tradition. What's your tradition?
Okay, so you are ISKCON. So Vedanta has reject ISKCON. We do not.
ISKCON is Hare Krishna, is that right?
But we reject
what is ISKCON? Is it Hare Krishna?
It's a Hare Krishna movement.
Okay. And what is your tradition, Panditji?
I am Vasishtha Advaita, qualified non-dualist.
Okay, so you don't believe in any, sects of Hinduism?
We don't believe in, you see, the ISKCON, their authority is Purana. We as Vedantins, we reject Puranas as authority, and our only authority is Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
So these guys believe in all kinds of miracles and wonders that we reject.
For them, Krishna is real, is a person, isn't it?
He is a real person who walked on the earth, had 16,000 wives. He lifted a mountain on his finger. They believe that literally happened, whereas we believe that is figurative. That is not literal. So
what about Vishnu? Do you believe that Vishnu is real, or is that also figurative?
Vishnu means the all-pervading. So that consciousness which is all-pervading is Brahman. That is what we believe.
Okay, so he's not a person as well. Vishnu.
He's not a person in the sky, lying on a cloud, on a snake. All of this is mythology.
Okay. All right, Amod, I think we got your point and we got Panditji's point.
I think we have to...
All the great acharyas which he follows reject this philosophy.
You have your view, and Panditji has let's agree to disagree between the two of you.
Krishna, that's all.
So, Brother Ahmad, just to clarify, look, you clearly, in your own tradition, allows you to have different positions.
Correct.
From what I understand, right? Yeah. So, look, I think based on your own tradition, you need to be respectful that Panditji is following something that is allowed by your tradition.
But what happens is that when he says mythology, it's an insult to the...
but according to his position and sect, he's allowed to say that. So I mean, you may not like it, I'm saying, but he's allowed to say it.
Yours is a third channel, right? So our Hinduism, or it should not be misrepresented. Only one-sided thing should not be represented. So there are multifaceted...
ISKCON does not represent Hinduism. The mainstream Hinduism is what is called Vedanta. You are not following Vedanta.
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has so much... He has teachings on Vedanta.
Yeah, you also believe Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the incarnation of God. We don't accept that he's incarnation of God. So,
yeah,
all right, let's agree to disagree, guys. I don't think we'll
what
come
I'm
to
saying
a conclusion
is
yet.
that the third party has to understand that there are different opinions. I'm not saying disrespecting.
I think they realize that there are many different opinions within Hinduism.
So main two differences are there. One is impersonalism and one is personalism. So Panditji, I respect him. He has an impersonal view of God, Brahman, and a lot of jugglery words are used. Whereas there is a personal God, Krishna, and that philosophy is much simpler. By just chanting of the holy name, you go to the spiritual world where you eternally live with God.
Yeah, it's like Islam.
Krishna,
you go to Jannah.
Eternal pastime. That is simple philosophy.
Yeah, you go to Jannah and you enjoy.
But not
that is the same.
No, not we. That is only with Krishna, not with something separate from Krishna. Okay.
Yeah.
With Krishna,
you, Brother
we will have all the pastimes, but not separate.
You'll have all fun
and games separate from Krishna.
Okay, we have to let you go.
That
we
is
have been keeping Panditji more than we
that is
agreed
that is the bliss, na. So ultimately, everybody is working for bliss. So that is the highest bliss.
Okay,
Brahman bliss is much lower than the bliss with the fun with God.
Okay.
Isn't it?
We're going to have to draw a line here, I'm afraid.
Participating in his pastime.
I'm afraid we have to We have to end here, I'm afraid. Thank you for joining. And
Thank you for joining again, Brother Ahmad.
And we'll probably
we'll try and give you
But
more
you
time
should
next
know
time.
that there are two faces of India.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Panditji, apologies again for running a bit over. As you can see, I mean, even though we're trying to keep questions to the minimum, to brief, and still, you know, goes up. But I think it still should be something that we can say that it at least has given us a broader view of the complexity of Hinduism, its philosophies or its understanding of the Sanatana Dharma. And in the last guest is Amud, that he explained, of course, there are differences between yourselves. What we were trying to is to demystifying, and I think we haven't demystified yet, and we've just scratched the surface. Are we talking about another stream to bring Panditji again to talk about some other issues? Because as we can see, time flies and we haven't covered really the subjects that we wanted to discuss. Or do we think, Panditji, you know, you've made your points and clarified?
The thing is that you've made a valid point that all religion, whatever it is hugely complex. And metaphysical arguments and discussions have been going on for thousands of years. And so to discuss that degree of complexity in a few interactions on a TV channel, on a YouTube channel, is not going to work. We cannot do justice to any particular subject. I think in terms of the concept of demystifying Hinduism, I think people would be, as the last question showed, people are more interested rather not in the metaphysic but in more practical ways of Hinduism as we know it amongst the common people. Because as I've said before, 99% of Hindus are ignorant of their own religion.
Is that by design or are willfully ignorant?
A lot of them are willfully ignorant. A lot of them it's due to inferiority complex. A lot of them is due to just indifference. Parents are more concerned with the material achievements of their children than they are of educating them in principles of religion and philosophy and spirituality. So although India is one of the most spiritual countries in the world, to a large extent among common people is very superficial. And so, it's just such a complex. And the thing is that we don't have dogma. I mean, this is the beauty of Islam, is that you've got pillars of faith, you've got consensus of scholars, and it can be structured very nicely, taught very easily. But Hinduism has no central authority. There is no common thread. I mean, I've been talking also about many different streams of philosophy that I'm trying to mix and match and trying to answer your questions. But to all the questions that Brother Abdul Rahman asked, there are different views within Hinduism.
Got it.
And so it's trying to negotiate that complexity, which is very hard. So, and I'm trying to maintain a neutral base and not speak from a particular sectarian point of view.
To be fair, I think, also I think it's unfair to expect one person to represent all the views. I mean, I just want to put that out there. So I think we wouldn't expect you to give a definitive answer to all of them. But I think as long as you believe you're representing your position, which is what we want, which is your faith position, at least within the sect that you're in, this is, I think, the best we can ask for.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Now, Brother Abdul Rahman, is there anything that you want to make final points on what you've discussed with Pandit Rami? And do you want to organize or arrange another, individual, topic sessions elsewhere to go into a deep philosophical level on certain areas, comparative discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I do know. I have a Hindu. He's a friend. He's a Facebook friend. Arjuna. He has a good channel, and he's philosophically minded. So he engages with these questions. So I guess I can have a back and forth with him. But yeah, I mean, as far as so far what I've heard, there are definitely some concepts that I'd like to explore further. and see what I agree with, what I don't agree with, and try to come up with a more like comprehensive comparative analysis. But yeah, but so far this has been good, and I thank Pandit Rami for coming on, and I thank you guys for inviting me, and it was good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think we should probably end it here, not keep the Panditji waiting long. He's been very patient and really appreciate that. Panditji, you're welcome to discuss another aspect. I'm sure we have only like scratched just the surface of the philosophy of Hinduism. There's a lot more to discuss. So would you be willing to come on another show? Maybe not, I'm not saying next week, whenever you're free.
Next week I'll be traveling, so it'll have to be the week after that.
And should we ask Panditji to suggest a topic, or should we?
We can discuss that by email.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll discuss it, whatever the topic is, as we did.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
But a huge thank you to Panditji to come and explain.
Ma salama, inshallah. All right, take care. All right, jazakallah everyone.
If there's nothing else to say, I'm just going to formally conclude this. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.